All right, hello, and welcome to the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist, and the only things that matters is film. The only things that matters. Oh, see, 2 weeks off just screws you up, and we are late, but we are live, and yes, we're coming off a 2 week unplanned break, but just had some kind of bad luck, I guess, in making the show happen the last couple of weeks. But we're happy to be here tonight, even if it is a little bit late, and finally get to the episode that we had planned all along, which is from 2001, Amélie, from French director Jean-Pierre Jeunet, starring Audrey Tautou. Pretty well-known movie as far as sort of a foreign movie goes. It's actually the most successful French language movie film. Jeez, it's the most successful French language movie in the U.S. It's done the best, and it's in its time it was very successful both commercially and critically. It was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, and um, yeah, it was definitely one that we'd considered doing for a while. And actually, it was our second time doing a Jeunet film, and that we did one of his earlier ones from the '90s, the City of Lost Children. Yeah, I think for a lot of people, because Amelie is again pretty well known and popular. I think a lot of people, although not everybody certainly, but a lot of people over here, I think they probably saw Amelie first, and then maybe if they wanted to find out more about him, saw some of his earlier stuff later, like City of Lost Children. That's not the case for me. I actually saw the City of Lost Children back in the '90s when I was in my early teens. I just happened to come across it on TV one day on, I think, Bravo, and I was captivated by it. But I'd come in about 20 minutes in. But luckily, I think in the next few weeks, I just sort of watched the channel, hoping it would come on again, and it did, because that's what you had to do in those days. You didn't have an extensive guide. And then I did watch it fully, and I was really enamored by it. And within probably about a year or so, I saw Alien Resurrection and had no idea that the same guy had directed it or anything like that. Alien Resurrection, of course, remains a strange oddity on Genet's resume. His one sort of attempt at a big Hollywood movie,
Yeah.
and not just a big Hollywood movie, but part of a big, well-known franchise. And uh,
I don't know that he is 100% to blame for what that movie is, though. So I don't know.
No, and there's still some stylistic flourishes of his that you see in the movie that you can appreciate. And I'm sure he had a lot to do with the casting too,
Sure.
because well, obviously, at least one of the actors in that film is actually also an Amélie.
Mm-hmm.
He was the wheelchair guy, wasn't he?
He was in City of Lost Children also.
Yeah, that's right. And in this, he's God. Now I can't. Well, this always happens, even though I have it up. I remember people's names. I can't believe I'm forgetting character names so quickly. But yeah,
I'm going to leave all the character names up to you tonight.
yeah. Well, I had them, and then I of course lost them. Joseph. Okay, this is Joseph. So anyway, the character Joseph, who I was talking about, yeah, he's in both those movies, and also, but just getting back to Alien Resurrection, it shows that Jeunet also had sort of a thing, sort of for character actor types, like people with like memorable like faces.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be his thing. You see it in a lot of movies, like. It's not and that's usually what you remember about movies. Movies either have very attractive people, or people that aren't attractive but have like a distinctive sort of look about them, and that almost, with the way the movie industry is set up, it almost sort of separates whether you're going to be like a leading actor or just a character actor. The lowly character actors, even though sometimes they're often the better actors, they're still relegated to supporting status. Like a Steve Buscemi might be the ultimate example.
Well, I would say in this film, with the exception of the title character, pretty much all the characters are, I don't know, I don't want to say unattractive, but not what you would typically see in a big budget film.
Mm-hmm, right. And in a way, it gives it a certain amount of realism in that, it's everyday life and everyday people. Not everybody's a model or whatever, or what have you. But yeah, I like his use of character actors in Alien Resurrection, including one he'd used before in. It's funny because I think he was speaking phonetically, but of course, Ron Perlman is in City of Lost Children, and then he also appears as part of the crew in Alien Resurrection. And one of my favorite character actors from back in the day was Michael Wincott. He's in there. I always like that guy a lot. He was the captain, and he's usually cast in bad guys in the early '90s. He's the sheriff's cousin in Prince of Thieves. He's Top Dollar, the main bad guy in The Crow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, gotcha.
Michael Wincott, who I think is Canadian. I'll have to double check on that, but I think he's Canadian born. At least Canadian born, maybe not raised. Stuff. But anyway, so getting to this movie, as we said before, a few weeks ago, people probably forgot. It's been so long with the layoff and stuff. We went hard in the paint, doing some dark stuff for October, and I just really felt the need to do something to like break off from that, and something a little happier,
Sure.
shinier, and brighter. And Amélie was something we thought of right off because it was something that we'd always sort of considered getting to at some point. So I think it's good for that as we enter into sort of the Christmas season. Maybe we'll do some lighter fare. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so this is a movie that I've always had a lot of affection for. It's a movie I used to own. I never replaced it after it got stolen in a burglary that happened to me years ago, which is too bad because I mean I really like the movie and I've always known it really well. So this is actually my first time seeing it all the way through in a couple of years, which is kind of a crime because I care about it so much. And anytime you go to, like, whether you're going to the theater or it's some other circumstance where you're seeing a movie for the first time, and it's, say, a movie that you know almost nothing about, and then you watch it and it turns out to be something you really like, that's always a really great moment that happens. But even on top of that, for me, like, sometimes that can happen. It's not just like, oh, I happened, to see a really good movie without expecting it. Sometimes it just hits you at the right time. Like, Amélie hit me kind of right when I needed it. It was at the right time. It was a sort of transition period of my life, an exciting, happy time for sure too. So this is like the fall of 2001. So I've just arrived at university. It's my first time away from home and stuff, and I'm trying to experience everything I can. Frosh Week has happened and all this, and now, but and classes have started. But there's still all sorts of crazy stuff going on, and I want to be part of all of it. It's probably the most social. It's never that social of a person, but like, my first few months at university was like the most social I ever was. Like, whatever was going on, I was like, yes, let's go. The people were like, we're going to go down to here. I'm like, yes, include me. So, and this was one of those things where people were going to the Oxford, which is a theater that's close to where I live here now. And it got closed in the last year, which is too bad because we were talking about how limited the release seems to be for the Suspiria remake and how none of the people in our circle seem to be anywhere near to be able to see it. And I think that's a movie that definitely would have been at the old Oxford, and now it's gone. But anyway, so Amélie was about the second movie I saw at the Oxford ever. The first one was during Frosh Week when they were doing like and the other thing they would do is they would re-show older movies. Not that this was an old movie, this 2001, but they did a special screening of The Matrix. And, I was with a bunch of people that went to see that. And that's like one of the only times I saw like a movie specifically because I was on drugs. We done mushrooms. It's like The Matrix. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember it as particularly trippy or different, really, but I guess it was fun. But anyway, about a week or two later, there was another movie. I didn't know anything about this. I don't even know if we knew what it was before we got there. But, French movie, Amélie. Okay, let's get into it, And it was... yeah, just kind of everything I needed in that moment. It's just sort of perfectly fit the way my life was going at the time, where I was, I'm 18 years old and I'm sort of on my own, and I want to experience everything like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm seeing a foreign movie, and I'm feeling very cosmopolitan maybe, and stuff like that. So, but what's good is, like, when all that kind of wore off and life became dismal and terrible again, I still like the movie very much. And I've liked the movie for many years. And there's even some things in the movie that have influenced me to this day. Some in kind of silly ways. Like, for instance, because of that movie, pretty much ever since probably sometime in 2002 to now, I always have a pair of red Converse sneakers that I have for summer wear. And I'm pretty sure I got it from that movie, from the repair guy who always wore the sneakers. Because I thought, oh, red, that's great. That's a good look. So I've had several pairs through the years, including up to now. And I only wear them in the summer because they're such flimsy fucking sneakers. But they're still cool and uncomfortable, but I like them. So So that's an influence right there. But also, it's a great example of one of my favorite things when done properly, which is magic realism. I'm a sucker for magic realism when it's done well. It's another reason why I like something like, say, the films of Wes Anderson, because Wes Anderson, that's kind of his stock and trade, is a sort of a heightened magic realism. And to refresh people on what that is exactly, it's just kind of like, it's not it's not far enough to be a fantasy. Usually, impossible things don't necessarily happen, but the things that do happen are sort of, they could happen, but they're kind of so unlikely that they never really would in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of that deal. And I mean, you can flirt with different parts of it too. Like, for instance, in like some of the Wes Anderson movies, you could say, well, yes, it is. It goes a little further into from real magic realism, even into fantasy, but in very small things. Like what comes to mind is my favorite. Is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, for instance. Like just little things like some of the animals he sees. Like he's like a crayon. What is it? It's a crayon seahorse. Well, there's no such thing, but it's just a little CG creature they created for the movie. But it's nice. It's not going to break the reality of the movie. And of course, the ending scene, where there's about 12 of them in a mini sub, which is pretty much fucking impossible too. So, but again, that's stretching things, and yeah, it's not realistic, but it's not, it's not a dragon flying through the sky, or I don't know, or a robot walking around. It's not that. So this movie has kind of those things too. And then it does have some things that you could say, well, they're not real life and impossible, but they're from the perspective of a heightened imagination, like when Amélie has like, various objects or animals talking to her. You don't think, well, that's really happening. You think that's her overactive imagination, which is a staple of her character.
It's really interesting that you bring up Wes Anderson. I think I hadn't thought about it till you said that, but those are, I mean, very, very similar in their, I'm not only in their, what is it, magic realism, but, their use of character actors and, almost like the quirky nature, because, I mean, pretty much all of Jeunet's films they're, I think, quirky to say the least, even, with serious tones like City of Lost Children.
Sure.
It's, got that,
whimsy.
Exactly. But, yeah, this film is so, I mean, the look of it is so striking,
The colors really pop.
It just adds to that, magical realism aspect.
Everything just does seem heightened,
Yeah,
and part of his style also is kind of like a fond kind of nostalgia for days gone by, because anybody living in Paris today will point out that Paris is not like this. In fact, it's been so many years, but in the English commentary that he did for the DVD release that I had, Jeunet himself even says, this is not the Paris of today. He's like, Paris today is fucking horrible. He says, I'm paraphrasing, but he says basically something like that. But this does take place in I don't know if you call it a district or a suburb of Paris called Montmartre. So some of the landmarks and stuff are real, but it's filmed in such a way to sort of like keep it kind of in a little self-contained world, which is very old world even for Paris. With cobblestone streets, narrow streets, and ramshackle buildings and stuff. They do everything they can to screen out the big metropolis that Paris is these days, with all its concrete and all that stuff. Like none of that is to be seen in this movie. They do a great job of completely hiding it.
Well, they had to clean the grime and the graffiti off of the pick up the trash, and just that adds to the rest of the film. It's really interesting that they had to do all that to match the look of the other scenes.
Yeah. For instance, the cafe where a lot of the action happens, where she works, the Café des Moulins, that's a real place in Paris. You can go visit if you want. But if you see its surrounding area, it's not really much like the way they make it look in the movie. I'm sure it's still a cool place and all, but again, it's a completely different world we're seeing in this movie. I mean, it's Paris, but it's kind of the Paris of yesteryear, kind of mixed in with a Paris that never was, which is, again, sort of a specialty of Jeunet, of incorporating these elements and blending them together into a world he finds appealing and interesting. And it works really well. It is really appealing and interesting. The colors really pop. Everything just seems slightly off, slightly heightened, and I don't know, like it's a pretty familiar thing. You see it in other movies and TV shows too, is the idea of like a centralized place like this cafe with like sort of its wacky cast of regulars
Mm-hmm.
and everybody having their own like banter in between. Um, you know, I know that exists in the real world, but it's actually a lot harder to find than movies would make you believe. Movies make it seem like, oh yeah, just go down the corner and it's like
Right.
that. But I mean, I'm Canadian, and people always talk about how friendly Canadians are and stuff like that. But it doesn't matter. I can go into any bar or cafe, and everybody's keeping to themselves. You know,
Right.
it's people aren't having conversations really unless they're with each other.
It's it's like a sitcom. You don't have your wacky like lesbian neighbor, is always coming over to borrow stuff.
Yeah, you almost expect something like that when you watch the cafe scenes. Is like to have a studio audience like applaud, like here's Joseph and stuff. So and of course the music is a big part of it too. The soundtrack has
Yeah.
endured even kind of beyond the movie. Here in Canada, the soundtrack was extremely popular and went platinum.
Wow.
And even for people that haven't seen the movie, you've probably heard the music used in other media because it's used a lot in stuff. Some of the things just to sort of evoke a certain feel. And if this being France and trying to evoke like old France, there's a lot of accordion in there. And it's very fitting. It has sort of a warm, quirky atmosphere. And yeah, and the whole thing with a narrative, like other movies have done this too, but this is probably the first time I experienced this kind of quirkiness. Like there's a narrator talking, and you see it in other things. And again, Wes Anderson seems to maybe he thought of it first. I don't know, and other filmmakers. But it begins, you have a narrator saying like it's 3:24 in the afternoon, the sun is shining over here, and this guy is looking at his shoelaces and that kind of thing. Like he's all about bringing you to a specific moment in time and what goes on. It's interesting. It makes you think about life, like all the little moments that we miss of people going on. Yes, you remind me. The full title in French is Le Fabuleux Destin d'Amélie Poulain, which is the fabulous destiny of Amélie, the last name being Poulain. I like the shortened title though, Amélie.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely plays for a worldwide audience a little better, I think.
Yeah.
It's I saw this. I saw I guess the DVD cover. Well before I actually saw the film.
Mm.
And I actually went the other way. You say most people probably watched this film first and then went back and discovered some of his other films. But I think I had seen virtually everything else he had done, up to that point, except for this film, and just kind of watched it. Just as a checkmark film, but it's probably his most critically acclaimed film.
Mm-hmm.
And almost the epitome of an art film, of a good art film, to a lot of people.
I think so. I mean, it's an art film, but it's also an art film that's accessible more so than a lot of art films where it's, it still has like a narrative and stuff, and
right.
and it has I don't know, enough of conventional stuff for like a regular, more casual audience that they can glom onto. So yeah, it's a good example of an accessible sort of art film for sure.
It
tells a very engaging story, moves along at a good pace. It never gets really confusing. It gets weird, but it doesn't get confusing.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be like, what?
Well, it's not a 5-minute shot of a bowl of fruit or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's supposed to symbolize something. But yeah, this film is such a specific look, and I think the director in particular, his films, you can immediately tell it's one of his films just by the look of it. And it's not to say that he uses the same look and the same look in every film, because like this is almost a direct contrast to Delicatessen, one of his earlier films, in that it's Delicatessen's just grimy and nasty and just gross.
Right. That the trope sometimes called "real is brown," which he uses, which is kind of where you really make kind of a monochrome look to a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically kind of the opposite of like an overly colored film and stuff like that. So yeah, he's got that going for him, and he does like to employ the sepia filter here and there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so, and I think Delicatessen has that.
All right.
But yeah, I think, like you said earlier, was it Alien Resurrections kind of the oddball?
Right.
I mean, the immediate the first scene of that film, I think it has like a fly hitting a windshield or something like that. You can immediately tell that it's his style film, but the overall look of it isn't like some of his other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't know if his experience on that like soured him on doing bigger films, or if it was just a one-time thing. Like, I don't really know what the circumstances were. It's obviously a very big deal for a European filmmaker to get handed such an important directing job.
Yeah, I mean, that was
Alien being a huge franchise.
This is right on the heels of City of Lost Children, so I'm guessing that's why he got the job, because they like the look of that so much.
I suppose, and I mean, I can get it. I guess whoever producers or whatever, I guess I can make the connection sort of seeing that movie and saying, that sort of dark, twisted stuff, like apply that to Alien. I think that would, turn out well. I don't know.
Apply that to Alien, but we're going to have complete and final cut, and we're going to control every aspect of this film from top to bottom.
Yeah, which again, it just seems like that's a complete contradiction.
Exactly.
Let's bring in this creative and free thinking and guy with his own sort of style and stuff, and we'll use it. But then we'll, like you said, we'll actually control it, and like it just defeats the purpose of bringing in somebody like that. If you bring in somebody like that to let them run wild, you don't bring them in so that you can say, just do what you did before and do it in such a way that we like, and yeah, we'll hack and change it. They learned nothing basically from what they'd already done to David Fincher's film.
Exactly.
Which is one of the more famous movies for executive meddling, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a story there that hasn't been told, that probably very similar to what David Fincher went through, but I don't know. Didn't David Fincher want his name taken off of that film at one point?
Yeah, he did. He was furious.
Well, and I don't know. I wish he'd come back for a proper director's cut, but I can understand not wanting to be affiliated, with that studio at all, because of the, bad experience he had.
Yeah, actually, it does say here, the success of The City of Lost Children led to an invitation to direct the fourth film in the Alien series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's actually when he lost. It's worth pointing out. Mark Caro was sort of like his co-director in his earlier movies.
Right.
Caro was not on board for the Alien thing. In fact, Jeunet believed this to be an amazing opportunity, but Caro was not interested in a film that lacked creative control, working on a big budget Hollywood movie. So Jeunet was at least willing to sort of take the risk. Like, I guess he knew what he was getting into and still thought, this is a good opportunity, blah, blah, blah. Whereas Caro wanted, I guess, to not compromise anything. It says he ended up assisting for a few weeks with costumes and set designs, but decided to work on and then he left.
He's credited on the art department.
Yeah.
I wonder if they've worked together since.
Here's something weird. So, a few weeks ago when I went to the library, remember, this all comes back from the girl with the dragon tattoo. So, I was looking for the girl with the dragon tattoo because at that point I'd never actually read it. I'd seen both versions of the movie, and if you talk to, the new movies coming out, in fact, is it out now? Like, where the hell is it? I was going to go see it. I lost track. But anyway.
I think it's already come and gone.
Jesus, that's really too bad because I actually meant to see it. So I went to the library to look for a few books, and specifically, I wanted to find The Girl with Dragon Tattoo. I thought, I can knock that out. That should be easy to find. And it turns out that The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo at my library was not in general fiction. It was in the mystery section. But I went to general fiction first, so I was looking for, Larson. And I came upon the book I Am Radar by Reef Larson. Now, I actually, at this point, had heard Reef Larson's name, but I didn't know why the hell I had. But I opened up this thing, and there's this whole thing about this sprawling, weird, really crazy book, and I was like, okay, I'm on board. I'll read that. Well, anyway, his what it got made Reef Larson a name was that he'd was his first novel, the one before this. It was called The Selected Works of T.S. Spivet, which was notable for, just like this novel, being one that's full of like visual stuff. Like, as you can see, there's all sorts of like, I guess that's sort of his style, is to have photographs and things and symbols and stuff like that. Anyway, upon looking up Jean-Pierre Jeunet for this thing, in 2013, he released an adaptation of that book. He called it The Young and Prodigious T.S. Spivet, which is an adaptation of Reef Larson's book, The Selected Works of T.S. Spivet. It's just one more, like, I don't know, stuff in my life just always lines up in a crazy way. Like, wow. I found this book just completely randomly. I was looking for something different. I decided to pick it up. And then I see the title, and I'm reading about Jeunet, and I see, that's like one of the last things he did. So that's interesting. Wow. So now I have to read that book too. This book's pretty good so far, but it's I'm interested to see how it's all going to come together, because it's nuts. It's one of those books that, again, kind of depresses me, because I'm like, I could never write something like this. This is way too dense. It's a really, really dense book. But anyway, so that's just kind of funny that that's like the last thing he did back in 2013.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know how good of an adaptation it is, and I haven't even read that book yet, but it'll have to be something that I look into. But yeah, just another example of something in my life lining up that way.
So how many books the Girl in the Spider's Web is 4, right? This is the 4th book in the...
Yeah, I think so, and it's the first one by a different author,
right,
because the original author died. And actually, he died quite a while ago. He died even before the first movies were made. He never got to see them as movies. He died in 2004. But yeah, but anyway, but yeah, I was kind of interested in that. I was thinking, oh yeah, that movie. So I rewatched both versions of the movie, and it's like time to finally read the book, and I got the book, and yeah, now that movie might have already disappeared. I'm all keen to see it.
It says around the 9th of November is the release date. Pretty much worldwide. That's what I'm seeing. And I mean, I read some good reviews about it, and
yeah, I heard people really liked the new actress, because that's the other thing. They had a different actress playing the lead role.
I think Rooney Mara's kind of
yeah, Rooney Mara's in the American version.
She's blossomed into a pretty big star.
And Naomi, or however you say her name, Rapace, or however it is, she was the original.
She's probably too old to play that role now.
Yeah, and I mean, I assume that's why they did it. It was just to keep the character at a certain age, because yeah. But anyway, that's the main thing I'd heard. I hadn't read too much, but I read that people really praised her performance, thought that she did a good job in the role.
Oh wait, she was in the film Unsane.
I haven't seen that, but that just popped up on my. Well, anyway, it's become available, so I could watch it. So maybe I will.
Yeah, she was the lead in that. Okay, yeah, she was really good in that too. So.
The new one.
Or Unsane.
No, I mean the new actress, the actress whose name.
Yes.
Yeah. What the hell's her name?
Claire Foy.
Yeah, Foy. There it is. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really impressed with her in the film Unsane.
Oh, I will have to watch it then, because yeah, that's a movie that's on my Crave. It's on my Crave now. I have Crave.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you told me that.
Yeah, it's combined with the TMN thing here. So yeah. It's good. I was binge watching one of my favorite comedies of the last few years. It's too bad it only got 2 seasons and then like 3 episodes in a 3rd season. Did you ever see Review?
Yes.
I loved that show. I thought that show was brilliant. It should have gone on longer.
What, Andy Daly?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Review and Nathan.
Nathan For You?
Nathan For You, yeah.
Yeah, I watched a bit of Nathan For You, but I'm bad at a show like Nathan For You, because it's like real, and I get embarrassed. I always feel uncomfortable. Yeah. I'm bad at that stuff. But I mean, I still enjoyed a few episodes of that too. Yeah, Nathan For You. That's also on Crave. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
They always cancel the good stuff.
Pretty much. Well, that's anyway. Back to Amélie. And also, it does a really good job of having like a lot of quirky characters, and they all kind of get a good equal amount of screen time. Nobody really overshadows anybody else. Like, it's all about Amélie. She's the center of everything, but you know, everybody else is important. They all play their own little roles, and they play off each other well. Just some of their conversations are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just sort of everyday talk and stuff. But yeah, the movie came out in 2001. It's set in the summer of 1997 because the event that kicks everything off is the death of Princess Diana, which is kind of an interesting choice and stuff.
I was like, man, they really like Princess Diana over there. Because they were still, you know, talking about it years later.
She was the people's princess. Well, she still definitely was like the most popular royal by like a long shot, especially like in other countries and stuff. And I don't know. I guess nowadays, who's that chick that married into it? You think I'd know because she's plastered all over the news last year. But anyway, you know, the chick that just married into the family now.
The one that married Harry.
Yeah, like she'll just have to be like face comparisons to Lady Di for the rest of her life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's the same thing. And that Lady Di wasn't born royal; she married in when she married Charles.
Right.
I think I've pointed this out before, but it's funny nowadays because we live in the world of everybody with camera phones and Instagram and stuff like that. So probably the most photographed person now would probably be like Kim Kardashian or something. But at the time of her death, Lady Di was the most photographed person in the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of what caused her death too.
Yeah, getting chased by like the even worse European paparazzi. That's even worse than like the American version.
Well, it's unfortunate.
So, yeah, I remember where I was when I heard about Lady Di. I was on a sleepover with one of my friends. I was at their house when I saw it.
And my mom's kind of obsessed with the royal family, so that was a big thing in our house.
Oh wow, it always seems so weird to me, particularly Americans that are obsessed with the royal family. Because I'll often hear Americans talk about how great it was to break off from the British Empire and all this stuff, and I'm just like, well, then how come you're like obsessed with everything they do? Mm-hmm. How come when you had what was it, JFK in the White House, you called it Camelot because you really wanted it to be like a royal thing? Like, I know that's not every American, but I just mean, you know, certain Americans have that kind of
yeah, there's a certain mystique to it, you know.
Yeah, I get it.
Oh.
I don't know. It's funny because I mean, as a Canadian, yeah, every once in a while they'll visit and they'll wave, and we're like, okay, bye now, you know. Yeah.
Kind of surprised it's kind of still a thing, but okay.
Yeah, because we're still affiliated with them. I can't remember exactly how it works. I mean, obviously we're a completely independent country, but we still pay tribute to them. You know, we'll still play "God Save the Queen" at certain events and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's crazy how long the Queen has been the Queen, the current sitting Queen,
Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth II. Yeah, very long.
It's been like 60 years, hasn't it? Or something?
Oh yeah,
maybe longer than that.
Maybe even longer. Yeah, it'll be a really different world when she passes on. Even though, again, she's basically a figurehead. She doesn't, do political things or anything like that. But I don't know. There's a lot more royalty. Like, obviously, that's the most visible and noticeable one in the world. But there's a lot more countries with, like, monarchies still around than you'd think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot more. Like, obviously, I wasn't even thinking about it, but I'm dating a girl from Thailand. They have a royal family.
Oh, really?
Which, I don't know, seems odd, but that's just how it goes. Like, I think her father had even done some work for the king years ago or something like that.
Wow.
It just... I don't know. When you think of like modern Bangkok, particular, you don't think of like a place with like a royal family. But yeah, Thailand, other countries too. So for whatever reason, countries still like holding on to them, just for the sake of tradition, I suppose.
I mean, what are you going to put on your money?
I guess so. Yeah, that's the other thing. Our money has changed so much over the last years because I mean. I guess the Queen's still in our 20s, but everything's different. And of course, the big deal now is the 10. It has our first woman on it, which is kind of interesting because she's a woman from here. I don't know if you heard anything about this, but Viola Davis, not Viola Davis, for God's sake, that's an actress. Viola Desmond.
Okay.
Viola Desmond. Well, I know that in the U.S., it's often taught in schools when they talk about the equal rights movement and all that stuff. A big figure early in it was what was it? Was it Harriet Tubman? Which one?
Rosa Parks, I believe.
Rosa Parks, right? So Rosa Parks, she was the one on the bus, right? So yeah, so Viola Desmond is kind of like our Rosa Parks, although what she did was actually about 10 or 12 years before Rosa Parks. And that she had kind of a similar sort of thing. It wasn't exactly the same. For one thing, Canada never had segregation.
Right.
But that didn't mean we didn't have, racism, of course. So it was something like, well, anyway, she was from here in Nova Scotia. I think she was from Halifax. But anyway, she was in, I'm probably butchering it, but she was in like Antigonish or somewhere, which is a community not too far from here. And she bought a ticket for a play, and she was going to go see the play. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, and like just some like racist, usher or something was saying, oh, okay, well, you go up on the balcony. She's right. like, my ticket's not for the balcony, it's for here. And anyway, and that was kind of her like Rosa Parks thing. She was very different from Rosa Parks' temperament, in that Rosa Parks, became like a big figure and stuff like that. I'm not saying Viola Desmond was more. She was more of a quiet person. She was uncomfortable in that kind of role. She didn't really want to be associated with it. Not that she didn't care about equal rights and stuff like that. She did. And again, it was sort of a different thing. We didn't exactly have the struggle for equal rights here. Again, blacks could vote. We didn't have segregation. But again, that didn't mean they didn't face racism and various forms of discrimination and stuff. But anyway, she's going to be on the 10. I used to walk by her grave every day. I used to walk through a graveyard. And what's funny is the last few years, now they have like a sign that points to where it was. But about 10 years ago, when I was living in that neighborhood, there was no sign. I knew where it was just because I can't remember why, but I knew where it was. But yeah. But anyway, she's on our 10, so that's kind of nice, I guess. I haven't gotten one yet. So that's our first like woman who's not royalty, I guess, because the queen counts, obviously, who's going to be on money. And,
yeah, it's a very pretty bill.
Oh, yeah, our 10s are purple. Yeah, our 10s are purple, our 20s are green. 50s are red.
It's crazy, man, talking about the segregation aspect of things. Like I went to one of the oldest cinemas in the southern states. The other 2 or 3 years ago, one of my good friends lives close by, and you could see the bricks were kind of a different shade over on one side. Like it had been, they'd bricked up an entrance, and then another area that was the colored entrance,
right? White and color.
To the balcony. They had to sit in the balcony, and they even had their separate, restroom, separate, place to purchase the tickets.
Yeah,
it was all, it's all gone now, but you could see where it was. And even our zoo in Jackson, the Jackson Zoo, it's gone now, but like when I was a kid, you could still see on the water fountains where it said colored, but it had been painted over. It's so bizarre. Like, cause that's well before my time, but I still got to experience some of it. Just, horrible stuff that went on. But,
yeah.
What are you going to do?
Probably there was some of that stuff in Virginia when I was there, but I didn't notice, or I can't remember now. But I mean, I saw some of the like stuff from even older, like that was slavery, because I visited a few of the big plantations, right? And they'd be like, well, here's the slaves' quarters.
Right.
One of them had a cool thing, though. I mean, within the context of what it is, obviously, where it was like from like the slaves' quarter, it was like it's sort of a cool like underground tunnel that was like a corridor that would lead into like this cellar where they could bring up. And it was just sort of thing for the servants to bring us stuff.
Oh, that was their entrance.
Yeah, I just mean the architecture is cool, people.
Right.
I don't mean the context of slavery, but yeah, it was. It was
sad that you have to say that. Yeah.
It was some clever architecture for the mid 19th century. I think the plantation was built in like the 1830s or something like that, and was active for however many years. I can't remember which one it was, but it was a really nice place, and they've kept it up very nicely. And obviously they pay full attention to all that. They point out the stuff about the slaves and stuff. They don't just whitewash it or be like, yes, this was a nice place where everybody was happy. They don't do that. But it's in Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, most everything was destroyed or recreated or whatever, changed in one way or another relatively quickly, because it's kind of a black mark. But you still do see some of that stuff that they've restored or kept in the original condition.
Yeah, I mean, there's some certain like architecture and stuff like from antebellum that has it's very nice to see and experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's just how history goes. Well, I just saw something on Twitter today about what was it? It was like a place where some like new recordings had just been discovered that had been hidden somewhere in Auschwitz, like during the Holocaust. And it was like some recordings made by like, I think, Polish Jews or something while they were in captivity. So
wow, I wonder where they found those recordings. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'll have to look into it. I only saw like a picture and a tweet leading to the article. I didn't even click the article. I just happened to see that. But just just another example of like, even in like the worst times or conditions, people are somehow creating good things. I guess I have to stop saying
Learn from it. That's all we can do.
Learn from move forward. But yeah. Trying to return to Amélie here. So the movie takes a little while, which is something I like. It takes a little while to actually find like a hard narrative. Like, we're not exactly sure what the resolution we're moving towards is, because at first it's just, okay, here's Amélie, here's a little recap of her backstory about her childhood and stuff like that, and that's explains some things like why she's a bit more withdrawn, her father being extremely emotionally distant from her, and then like exacerbating it by misdiagnosing her with having like a heart condition. So then they homeschool her and keep her away from the world and make her even more withdrawn and weird and reliant on her imagination and stuff like that. But like, yeah, for like the first like half hour or so of the movie, you don't really see if it's going in any particular direction. Right. It's just, here's Amélie, and okay, the Lady Di thing has happened, which causes her to in surprise drop her mug or whatever, and she finds the hidden compartment in her bathroom where she finds the box of the treasures from the boy that lived there, and that's how it starts. But again, you're like, this can't be the whole movie. So it takes a little while before it branches out into like something more about a personal journey for Amélie. Because at first, and that's the whole point, because at first she's on the periphery trying to affect other people's lives, but she's not concerned about her own. The movie eventually becomes about how it's time to step in and start being more proactive and live life yourself. You can't live life on the sidelines. You can't just screw around with other people. You have to actually try to live your own life and enact change yourself, which is what eventually happens. But yeah, but even though it takes a while in getting there, I don't think most people, at least I certainly didn't find myself impatient. I wasn't like, where's this going? I was just enjoying the ride. I liked seeing her playing her tricks on people and observing them and stuff like that. I found it all really interesting and enjoyable. And I'm always happy to watch a French movie and try to like test myself. It's funny, it really shows like the difference between how some of these people talk. Like, her conversations with the old man, the artist, are fine. They're perfect for me. I can close my eyes. Mm-hmm. I understand everything. I don't need the subtitles. But when certain characters speak, particularly like Gina, who is sort of the head one at the cafe, I can't understand a goddamn thing Gina says. I don't know if it's because she talks too fast or if her accent is too strong, but I could only catch like every third or fourth word she was saying. Because sometimes I would close my eyes and be like, okay, let's see what Gina's saying. And I just have to like back it up because I'm like, I don't know what the hell she's saying. I know she's speaking French, but I can't follow it. So and it was like that with a few other characters, but she was definitely the worst. So it just sort of seemed to depend upon who was talking, just their way of talking. Sometimes I could follow it, other times I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with the old man, it's easy because he just had sort of a very slow and deliberate way of speaking, which is just easy for anybody listening to a language that's not your own and stuff. I like when he's trying to tell her when she messed up the name when she's trying to track it down. He's like Bredeto or Brodoto or something like that. Like he's saying it's like not Broto, like Brodoto. I can't remember, but I like the way he says it. So he's an interesting guy. He's a Mr. Glass character. He's got that disease where he can't really go out anywhere. His bones are super brittle, so he has to like retreat from the world and live in here. He's an artist. He spent the last little while or a bunch of years painstakingly trying to recreate one of Renoir's paintings. What is it? Luncheon of the Boating Party, famous Renoir painting, and he's been sort of fixated on this. And it's interesting to hear him talk about what he's trying to achieve with her. I don't know. I'm always interested in stuff like that when writers talk about their process or artists and stuff like that. So little things like that. There is a writer in the movie. He's one of the regulars at the cafe. I mean, he's referred to as a failed writer who constantly has his manuscripts rejected, but he keeps trying. I can't remember his name either.
So many characters in this film.
It's hard to keep. His name is. Oh, he has like a weird. He has like a weird, like Italian sort of name. His name is Hippolito or something like that. Which is weird because I had forgotten that to the point that at the very end of the movie, when they're just doing the quick recap sort of thing and showing where the various characters are before we fade out, when they show him, when he's doing his normal walk in the morning to the cafe, he sees one of his own quotes on the wall. And it makes him happy. But at the time, I'd forgotten that was his name. So I was like, what is that? Some sort of Greek philosopher? Who's Hippolito? I don't remember that, but it was one of his own quotes. And that's why he's happy. And he has like a spring in his step because somebody actually paid attention to something he said. Maybe it was Amélie, because that's the kind of thing she does, but who knows? But yeah, quite a few characters. Yeah, Dufayel, that's the glass man. Her father's name is Rufus. And of course, one of the names that I think is easier to remember is the young man she falls in love with is Nino. Mm-hmm. But yeah, quite a few characters, and their names come and go. I remember Colin too, because there's a big long thing where his name keeps getting repeated. Colin is the mean grocer, because there's that whole scene where the glass man is talking to Lucien, who is the grocer's assistant, and he's trying to tell him to like stand up for himself because, Colin spends most of his time like verbally abusing Lucien and basically like trying to embarrass and humiliate him in front of people, which leads to a pretty interesting part of the movie because like it's one of the only times I've ever seen a movie where a character engages in what is known as gaslighting, and yet it's actually for humorous purposes instead of malicious. Gaslighting, for those who don't know, comes from the movie Gaslight, which is all based on the idea of screwing with a person in such a way as to make them doubt their own memory and sanity and stuff like that. And it's something that is real and people do, but usually if people engage in it, it's because you're like a sociopath and you're out to really damage or hurt somebody. But in Amelie's case, well, yeah, she is kind of out to damage him a bit, but it's more to like take him down a peg because he's being so mean to Lucien all the time. And it's pretty funny because she gets the key and like it all just comes to her pretty quick because she's going to give him his key. Then she sees his latest thing, in front of a whole audience of people talking about how dumb Lucien is. Then she's like, no, I think I'll go away with this key and make another key. Then she even gives him another like chance before she decides to actually do something. And it's another little one of those artistic flourishes of the movie is like when you see her walking away after she replaces the main key is suddenly the key in her pocket glows. So you know that she has another key in her pocket, which is pretty cool.
That's a cool little special effect.
Yeah. Yeah, the effects in this, I don't think they're dated at all. They all look fine. Mm-hmm. Even like the weird animals in her paintings and stuff when they start talking. It's all pretty seamless. It all looks very nice. They don't go overboard with these effects. They're fairly subtle, and they blend well with the world that they are contained within. But yeah. Oh, I had some weird feedback there on the volume. on the mic. You didn't hear anything? Oh, okay. I don't know. Maybe that wasn't you. Maybe it was me. But anyway, if that showed up on the normal sound, sorry about that. Anyway, no big deal. But yeah, I'm just trying to keep track of the various little projects she embarks on. So there's the gaslighting thing. The very first thing she does that brings us all, that makes this all happen, and where she decides to change her life, because at first she's just sort of living her life sort of as a normal withdrawn person. Then the whole thing of the revelation of discovering the child's box. This is, I'm going to find out who the child was and reunite him with the box, and if it makes him happy, then I'm going to like do this full time. And after going through a lot of lengths to track down who had lived in the apartment in the 50s and stuff, and finding out who the man was, she, you know, basically manages to maneuver him in such a way. This always puzzles me in movies, because even though the stuff she's doing is different, you'll often see movies where characters have access to telephone booths in that they know how to call them. How do you find out the number of a telephone booth?
Well, you know, back when we had payphones, I think they had a callback number, at least.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, and I was thinking about that even more today, because, again, this comes back to this book, because I'd heard of this before, but they don't really talk about it. It's something that was big in the 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s. It was called, you know, phone phreaking, you know, with the PH. Have you ever heard of phone phreaking? It was basically, this is obviously before the digital age, but it's basically kind of similar to the idea of hacking. It was when people figured out how to use various tones and stuff, and they built things. One of them was called a blue box, a black box, and a red box, and it was ways of like basically hijacking payphones and being able to do things with them, most notably making like long distance calls completely free.
Right.
The origin is crazy, because it goes back to in 1959. Like, I thought when I read this in the book, I was like, is that real? And I looked it up. It is real. In 1959, a 7-year-old blind boy who happened to have perfect pitch found out that if he mimicked and he whistled the right tone into the phone, he could get it to do things like, and his name is like Bubble Joy or something like that. I don't know. I was actually deep into the Wikipedia article a little while before the show, reading all about phone phreaking, because I'd heard about it before. But anyway, it's something that's mentioned here because this book has a lot to do with a character named Radar, who seems to have some sort of like weird innate ability to affect radio waves and radio equipment and stuff like that. It's crazy. But yeah, I was thinking about that a bit too because I was thinking about payphones, and then of course this movie has some payphones and stuff. So you're right. I think you are right that it does have a callback number. It was always very mysterious. I've never in my life ever been anywhere and like a payphone starts ringing. But it'd be cool if it did, because then it'd be like I was in a movie. You know, if you answer a payphone that's ringing, something dramatic's going to happen.
It's, I mean, it's few and far between that I even see them anymore.
Yeah, I've memorized where the ones around here are. There's no booths left, but there's just little, like just a thing for the phone. There's one down by the boardwalk. I'm not close to one at all. I'd have to go pretty far to get to one. But yeah, even the payphones that used to be like in buildings, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's one down by the boardwalk. There's
walls of payphones, like I mean everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean they're just completely gone. But
yeah, I mean it's not like I enjoyed using payphones or anything like that. I mean we're certainly better off not having to rely on them, but it's another little piece of the old world that's gone now. So yeah, I still feel a little strange when I see them.
Well, let's face it, they were gross.
Oh yeah, I mean they were gross.
I don't want
everybody in the world had touched it and coughed on it and whatever.
Ear. I don't want to be where someone else's ear was, or you know, any part of them really. But
I actually got a call from a payphone a few days ago, which was really weird. Like for whatever reason, in the last like year, if maybe even 2 years, my number is like a magnet for crazy wrong numbers. I think I told you this before, that even for a full year before I got when I just gave up on it and finally just blocked the numbers, there was a group of no less than at least 3, might have been 4 or 5 people, somewhere in the Halifax area. They were all, by what I could tell by when I heard, because a couple of them did even leave messages, although that was rare. Mostly they just texted, but they would call sometimes too in the middle of the night, and most of them, they seemed to be like in their late 40s to early 50s, and they were all clearly heavy drug users. because usually their texts were about if somebody had picked up drugs or meds. And of course, this would be at weird hours, or they say they need to come over. One texted me to let me know that the cops are outside, just to let you know, stuff like that. So they were obviously like a group on the fringes of the law here that like were abusing like prescription drugs and possibly, you know, illegal drugs and stuff like that too. And like I just let it go on because I couldn't believe that like I never ever engaged, never answered the phone, never answered a text, and they thought I was a woman named Lorna. And all I could think was, don't they ever see Lorna? Don't they ever say, hey, Lorna, I called you 6 times last night. What's going on? Or did you get my text? Like, I'm thinking these people are like so fucking fried. And Lorna's probably just as bad as them. They're like, they have no idea. So, a few months ago, I finally just, like, to hell with it, and I blocked the number and stuff like that. But anyway, I still get wrong numbers constantly, and I usually ignore them. But what was really weird is, like, most of the time, it'll show me the number, but there's no name or anything. Like, my caller ID will show a number, won't show a name. But the other day, it came up. It was like Bell Alliant payphone. I was like, no way. I almost answered it. I didn't. But I was like, who's calling me from a payphone?
Somebody's got the hook up for Lorna.
Probably, man. But yeah.
I've had my number for almost 20 years now. And I still get odd text and calls.
Yeah, I mean, I've had this cell phone number for, I don't know, about 7 or 8 years probably. And I didn't get wrong. It's only been in the last 2 years, especially last year. Last year I used to get like 3 wrong calls like a day. Like
must be like 1 digit off or something.
Something like that. Yeah, probably.
Number.
I remember one of the last people that called who's, if it wasn't part of Lorna's circle, was the same type of person. Because like I'd been talking to my mom on the phone and he beeped in a couple times and I ignored him. And the mom said, "Send me the number. I'm gonna call him." I said, "Fine." So she called. This was a Sunday morning. I had been up all night. That's the only reason I was talking to my mother this early. She was gonna go to church. It was like a Sunday morning at 7:30. So she called the guy. He was clearly already outside. She could hear like wind and stuff. And she's like, "Who is?" And she said like he was like high or something. Because like she's like, "Who is this?" He's like, Dave." Like Dave is like the perfect name for like the Dave's not here, man. Stuff like that. And she's just like, stop calling this number. It's wrong. And he's just like, okay. Like, I guess according to her, he sounded like completely out of his mind. I'm just like, yeah, probably part of the Lorna circle.
Wow. Dave.
Yeah, it took him a moment to think of it. So who knows? But yeah, payphones are used, the way they are in movies. A nice dramatic effect in this thing. She maneuvers some people around using payphones, which I don't know. It has a certain appeal to me. I like the idea of,
Well, that's Nico's whole thing is getting the torn up pictures from payphones.
No, right, the photo booths.
Right, Nino.
Yeah, Nino has and that's the other thing that we eventually come to, which is the idea of like Nino is a weird, isolated person too. So obviously they're soulmates. They're meant for each other, and they have to come together. Because when she meets one of his like coworkers, he used to like do things like record people's laughs. He'd take pictures of like footprints in cement. But now his latest thing is he would go to the photo booth at the station and he would collect the discarded photos, the ones that people threw away, and he would paste them back together if they ripped them up, put them in the album. And the big enduring mystery was constantly after like at certain intervals, he kept finding photographs of the same man who would just take 4 with a blank. He wouldn't change expression all the time. And then he would leave them. And he was like, who is this man? What is he doing? And they had all like this, and they had all these theories. And she even talks when she gets a hold of the binder. She talks to the glass man about it. And they think, oh, maybe he's afraid of getting old, or he's afraid of dying or being forgotten and all this stuff. And it's weird because it's a movie that's full of whimsy and all that quirky stuff, and it's the one time where like we find out like reality sets in. It's just like it's nothing like that at all.
Right.
Or the answer is he's a maintenance guy, he's a repair guy. He has to go and fix the machines, and as part of it, he does a test. He does the test on himself. He has no reason to smile or make things, and he has no reason to keep them, and that's why. And it's kind of funny because it's the one time where reality actually intrudes in this world of like quirky magic realism.
And we know that he has the red chucks on.
Yeah, the red chucks, which, again, I became a big fan of. I was like, yeah, it's a good look, red chucks. But, so that's where we eventually wind up. But she has various projects earlier. Speaking of phone freaking, there was another thing that has been like since the 80s, at least since the first recorded incidents in 1986, is the traveling gnome. This really popularized the idea of traveling gnome. But again, you can look this up on Wikipedia. Huge thing. There was even like a thing called like the Society of it. It involved like people in multiple countries. The ringleader himself got arrested because technically it is a crime to steal people's property. But so it's the traveling gnome, which is stealing somebody's garden gnome, sending it around the world and taking pictures and then sending the pictures back to the person. What's really weird is this movie came out in 2001, the same year that the last album by one of my favorite bands from back in the day, Matthew Good Band, their last album before they broke up, and actually the album was made while they were breaking up, so it's not remembered fondly by Matthew Good, which is too bad because I think it's a good album. It's called The Audio Being. The Audio Being only had a few sequels, but one of them was the song Anti-Pop. And Anti-Pop's video is that. It's Matthew Good and the only remaining band member left, because the others left when it broke up, stealing somebody's gnome and doing that. And it's the video. You can see it on YouTube. I hadn't seen it in years, but my memory's good, and that's what they do. They steal somebody's gnome, and then they go around and, they go around places in the world on a jet, and they take pictures, and they get, like, people to pose with it, and then they eventually send it to the person. But, yeah, the traveling gnome.
Stupid. It seems stupid, but...
It was a big...
Known as roaming gnome or gnoming.
Yeah. No, it was a big thing.
I remember there was a company called Travelocity. It was like a...
Oh, yeah, they're still around.
Okay. Well, yeah, that was their big thing.
Yeah, he's like their spokesperson.
Yeah.
He would, like, talk to the camera and stuff. Yeah, it was based all on that idea. I don't know if it's as popular now, but for a few years it was kind of a big thing, and to the point where people were like... Some people who own gnomes are getting upset about it. My feeling is always this. Gnomes are stupid, so if you own one, you deserve to have it happen to you.
Sure.
I know you're going to say, oh, it's stolen property. I'm like, why do you think that should be on your property? It's a ghastly fucking thing.
Well, it's...
Just be glad people aren't taking a sledgehammer to it.
You take it with you, take pictures, and then return it, I guess? Is that the idea? Is you return it when you're finished? Okay.
Yeah.
That seems fine then, yeah.
Yeah. And in the case of Amélie, she does eventually return it, but what makes it even better is she makes it so that, like, while it's gone, the pictures are being mailed to her father. And she's not just screwing with him. It actually does work at the end. She's trying to get him to get out and live his life, too, because after the death of her mother, which is, again, the type of stuff that Wes Anderson is all over. He's all over this kind of shit. Because it's a tragic death, but, of course, it has to be quirky and weird, too. Her mother was killed by a suicidal Quebecois tourist who leaped to her death and landed on her. Like, it's sad, but it's also ridiculous,
Yeah, I don't know what you call that. It's like a really tragic thing that happened, but it's almost done for comedic effect.
Well, there's definitely a word for that, but I can't think. I can even remember there's a part where, like, Lisa's trying to say it. She's trying to explain it to Homer, and Homer's like, oh, you mean like when a clown dies. Shit.
But yeah, Wes Anderson does that a lot in his stuff.
Yeah. Here's my only problem with Wes Anderson with this stuff. Why does he hate animals? Wes Anderson can't get through a movie without murdering a beloved animal.
Really?
Yeah. Like, at least in my favorite one, the animal isn't actually murdered, but it winds up abandoned. So in Life Aquatic, they get attacked at one point by pirates. And the pirates have a 3-legged dog with them. After he fights off the pirates, he's yelling at them, you forgot your dog! So they basically adopt the dog. And they've got the dog, and they take care of it. But then when they go to the point where they find where the pirates are holding up with their, as Steve calls it, the Bond Company stooge, who they've taken hostage, and they have to go rescue him from this abandoned hotel resort place. After they rescue him and they're escaping from the pirates, they find out they forgot the dog, and now the dog's just left on the island. But in other things, he just fucking kills them. Okay, so at the end of, what is it, the Royal Tannenbaums, in like some sort of like drugged up, drunken stupor, what's his name, the blonde one.
Oh, was it Owen?
Owen Wilson drives his car and crashes it into their house. Everybody manages to get out of the way except for the dog, so he kills the dog. In in Moonrise Kingdom, when all the mean scouts attack the boy and the girl, they start firing real arrows at him. They kill the fucking dog by accident, but they kill him. I think in one of the running gags in the Grand Budapest Hotel is, at least this one is somewhat makes sense because he's the bad guy. Adrian Brody's like a really bad guy, and he wants to like hunt down and kill these people. At one point, he gets so mad that he throws a cat out a window to its death, which is played off for laughs. And I'm pretty sure an animal dies in Rushmore too, but I can't remember because I haven't seen that movie in 100 years. But yeah, what the fuck is your problem, Wes Anderson? Like, I get that you like putting a little bit of drama and danger in your movies because it's like, yes, they're quirky and, you know, but like real danger and bad stuff does happen. But it doesn't always have to happen to fucking animals. Like, cut it out is all I have to say. I like Wes Anderson. I like your movies. But just lay off on murdering innocent animals. It's not adding to the plot for me. It just seems ridiculous. And the way people react to it is really weird, too. So then, after they fight off the attack, and they have a nice close-up of the dead dog with the arrow through its neck. And the girl says to the boy, "Was he a good dog?" And he looks at her and goes, "Who's to say?" Like, what the fuck?
His director's trademark is killing animals.
I even read like a full article about it. Like, I'm not the only person to notice this, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I know you want to add some dramatic weight to your movie, but you don't always have to do it by killing animals, Wes. So maybe tone that down in future films. But anyway. What's nice is no animals were killed in this movie. That's a nice thing. Although it has that really sad moment at the beginning, too. So, like, what was it? She had a goldfish, but the goldfish was suicidal. Right. So eventually they said you have to return the goldfish. So there's that really great shot of her standing on the bridge and letting the goldfish down into the stream. And as he hits the water, it starts to rain, and she's looking down. And the goldfish, I'm sure it's CG, looks at her and seems to, like, the moment passes between them. Then the goldfish realizes, okay, I have to go, and swims away. It's a really sort of powerful moment, actually. You're like, wow, can you imagine experiencing that as a child? You can say it's just a stupid fish, but still. I mean... So yeah, I think that's the worst thing that happens to an animal in this movie, is a fish is set free, which I guess isn't so bad.
Yeah. And then that fish overpopulated some body of water somewhere.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this movie does a good job of the way it mixed in some of the CGI stuff. They did it in such a way that it, you know, it doesn't seem out of place or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't even think. I know the fish you were talking about is a good example. The key.
Yeah, it's mostly just sort of subtle little things. You know, it's not big things. Again, probably like the biggest one is like towards the end when she's in her bed and the weird pictures with the animals start talking. But even that's, you know, that's all right.
Yeah, which is how to do it. You know, you don't want to, which is what keeps it from feeling dated, I think.
Yeah. Apparently certain people watching this movie feel the need to try to like diagnose various characters, including Amélie, which I think completely defeats the purpose of the movie. You know, just leave it alone. Not everything has to be about that. Like, you could say, oh, maybe she's autistic, or even she has some sort of form of schizophrenia. Although you could say that the movie shows evidence that would contradict both of those things. So, I mean, anyway, all I have to say is anybody that's thinking about her mental health, like, you're missing the point of this movie, dude. Like,
right.
Let it go. This is not the type of movie where you're supposed to speculate if people have certain disorders. Again, it's part of the magic realism. Yeah, people are quirky. But,
well, I mean, long story short, two lonely people find each other and fall in love, right? I mean,
sure. Yeah, they find each other. They recognize, you know, similarities about each other. But, yeah, this idea that they can't really relate to the rest of the world, but they can finally relate to each other.
So is this like a one of the films they show in like psychology classes? Let's diagnose all the characters.
I would really hope not, but God knows, probably someone does, or something like that.
Because we know one character is a hypochondriac right off the bat.
Yeah, that's right. Which again, is played for laughs. which I think is fine. I mean, are people really going to get upset about? I really am a hypochondriac. Like, come on, people, just lighten up. I think I'm really sensitive about mental health stuff, but I mean, even I can say, lighten up for a movie like this.
It's not a laughing matter.
Yeah. But yeah, her hypochondriacism leads to some really sort of clever lines too. I like some of the lines in it. I like the thing where after she manages to manipulate her, and so that Joseph and her get together. Because the whole point, because you could say, because again, this wouldn't work in another context. Mm-hmm. Joseph is the jilted lover of Gina, and he keeps just showing up so he can basically stalk her, And that's played for laughs. I get it. In the real world, that's not funny. But here, it is funny. Joseph's kind of an idiot, but he's not dangerous. He's not going to do anything. And it shows one of her experiments kind of doesn't work because he gets her together with the hypochondriac, but it only has short-term benefits because then he just winds up doing the same thing to her, driving her crazy.
Yeah.
With like smothering her. Georgette, that's her.
Makes a rash come back.
Yes, that's right. But yeah, originally, another thing from the commentary is that he wanted Emily Watson, an English actress, but they just had to drop her because one, Watson was, I guess she had some rudimentary French, but she wasn't fluent or anything like that, so that was a problem. And then she wound up getting involved in the shooting of what's it called? Gosford Park, sorry. So and that took her away. So that's how they wound up getting Audrey Tautou.
I'm a big fan of Emily Watson too, but I really don't. I can't imagine anyone else in this role.
Yeah.
But striking eyes, Emily Watson has very striking eyes also.
Yeah, and that's a big part of having big, wide, expressive eyes. Mm. So I guess you could see where that goes, but yeah. Plus, I don't know if she could pull off that cool haircut. I don't even like looking up Audrey Tautou now because she's 42 now. Like, I just want to think of her perpetually as that, as Amélie, as like the 23-year-old or whatever.
She did a film with Jeunet right after this film, I believe.
Yeah. Was it? Hold on, let me think. I can't think.
I had it in front of me. It's Very Long Engagement.
Oh, okay.
I think that was the next project after Amélie.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Young woman's desperate search for her fiancé who might have been killed during World War I. Sounds much more serious.
Oh, wow. She was in Dirty Pretty Things. I didn't realize that was her. It's a really good film, too.
In a lot of stuff, but I haven't seen it. So that's the other thing. I haven't really seen her in anything since that. I don't know any of these movies or whatever they are.
Well, she's doing a lot of American movies. Da Vinci Code, probably one of the.
Okay, I have seen that, but I don't recognize anything else. I've heard of Mood Indigo, but I haven't watched it. Actually, it was probably on my list to watch a few years ago, and then I forgot about it. I can't even remember what it's about anymore, but there was a time where Mood Indigo was something I was interested in. I was like, yes, look into that. Yeah, it's one of the things that fell by the wayside and I forgot about.
Mood Indigo. What year was that? I can't find that on her filmography.
2013.
Okay, there it is. Cool. Add that to my list.
Yeah, I can't even remember what it is anymore. Now it's just the title. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Dirty Pretty Things is really good. You may want to check that out.
Yeah, I will. But last year, or just around Christmas, when we did Fooly Cooly, the only non-movie we've done so far. Like, I talk about like how that's just one of those things. Like, it's one of my favorite things because it just elicits sort of pure joy in me. This movie's kind of similar, not as strong, but it's a movie that I kind of want to live in. I really felt that way after I saw the movie too, like years ago when I first saw it. I was just like, oh, that would be like a great world to be part of and stuff. It made me feel very romantic about, you know, Paris and stuff like that. Although again, it's not a realistic depiction of present day Paris. Although you think, well, maybe there's like some smaller French towns that are maybe a little more like that.
I was going to mention this earlier, but one of my friends in high school, he went to Paris and he came back, and the only thing he told us about his whole experience was the first day that he got there, he saw someone taking a shit in the middle of the street.
Yeah, that would kind of put a cloud over your vacation, wouldn't it?
I always think about that all the time. This makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Like, fuck Paris. I'm never going back there.
Yeah, because I mean, I can think of several movies that have Paris, and all they seem to really try to focus on is just like how terrible a place it can be. The extreme version, the extreme example of this, of course, being Irreversible, which features a brutal rape in Paris.
I forgot that took place in Paris. Yeah, it's a good one.
But also, Paris is like the main setting for the the Liam Neeson movie, where it's like if you go to Europe as a tourist, you'll get kidnapped by sex traffickers.
I have a very special set of skills. Taken? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Taken. Okay. I mean, his daughter is in Paris for like 5 minutes, and then she's immediately targeted by sex traffickers.
She didn't even get off the plane.
The guy is waiting for her at the airport. He's like, let us share a cab.
That's funny.
I'll be back later to kidnap you. Because this is Europe. And everything is horrible. And there's a similar, as I said, the movie that I always prefer to take in is the 80s one with Harrison Ford, Frantic, which once again involves the disappearance of an American tourist in Paris. It's like, what's going on, Paris? People talk about like various cities, you know, you always look up like various countries and stuff, like it's not a good place to go, like as a tourist. Paris is not one of those places, but movies would make you think it is. It's like, no, it's like Rio de Janeiro. That's where you're going to get kidnapped.
Yeah. Yeah, we should do a Gaspard Noé film on here sometime.
Yeah. I feel really bad that I couldn't get to see his latest film. That was one of the films that was at the Atlantic Film Festival. And,
Climax? Is that it?
Yeah, Climax. And now I know, again, when the people there talk about, like, you know, they're there to promote everything, but they really sold it hard. They're like, you have to see this movie and stuff, but I just couldn't fit it in. I managed to see about 5 movies. What's interesting is one of the movies I chose not to see because I had to see something else was Mandy. And you know, people have been raving about Mandy. So I'll finally get to see Mandy because that's going to show up on Shudder in like 2 or 3 days. So we'll finally see it. I watched I'd never seen anything of it, but just a few hours ago I watched a little trailer for it. I don't know, I like stuff with cults, so
I'm looking forward to it.
Good. I like cult stuff. So we'll see. Yeah, that should be interesting. But yeah, Climax is very much an art film, even for Noé or however you say it, because it doesn't really seem to have much of a plot. It just seems to be a bunch of stuff. But yeah, we should do one of his movies, just like Lars von Trier.
Right. We could do a few of his.
I know. Part of me really wants to like subject myself, even though I'm sure I'll hate it, to Dogtown or Dogville or whatever.
Yeah, it's a rough watch.
Yeah, and long too. But part of me feels like I should do it. Anyway, speaking of the Atlantic Film Festival, it's where he did his latest film was there, The House that Jack Built, and I loved that. I thought that was great. Does anybody? I mean, I don't know how that's become available. I haven't talked to Piz in a while, but I know like he would adore that movie. That's like everything he loves. I assume he hasn't done it, because if he did, he probably would have done a review for it, and I usually keep abreast of the stuff that he reviews.
Yeah. Let's see. Trying to see if it had a release date yet. I don't believe so. At least not from what I'm seeing here.
It is really good. Like I expected, I thought I would probably like it, and like it really fulfilled my expectations.
That's the one that people said was really like shocking, right?
Yeah, it's not going to shock you.
That's why it didn't. It's going to take a lot to shock me at this point.
Yeah, it's not going to shock you.
But
it's just it's about a serial killer, so it's quite violent, brutal. And there's a few like victims that we've talked about this before that are not acceptable victims in the world here, even though it's a movie. But yeah, so that's really all it is and stuff. But and so it's super arty. Like it often it's narrated by the main character, and he'll often like do digressions to talk about other things, and then you'll get like stock footage or photos and stuff like that while he talks about. A big part of it is he's an engineer, but he wanted to be an architect, so he's always talking about like architecture and stuff like that. So he'll do like digressions where like you'll see like pictures of cathedrals and stuff while he blabs on, but it's all really good. It's really good.
Yeah, I knew nothing about the plot or anything. I just knew it was Von Trier, and
it's not much of a plot. It's just basically he's a serial killer who's been active like in the 70s and 80s, and he's just now basically telling about his life, but not in a linear fashion. He's just like, okay, I'll tell you about 5 separate incidents out of order, and that's all it is. It's like first incident, this incident, and that's all it is. And then it does come towards a fairly what's the word I'm looking for? Pretentious kind of finale, but again, I like it. It works. And I figured out the finale pretty quickly because there's a name that happens in the movie, and I associated the name with a piece of literature. And if you know the piece of literature, you kind of know what they're going for. That's all I'll say. But I'm sure there's plenty of people that the name meant nothing to them, and so they didn't know what was happening. But I had a pretty good idea, and then it worked out to be that way. But even though I knew that, I still liked it. Very entertaining movie. Looking forward to seeing it again when I can. But that's the other thing about speaking about movies is that I'm disappointed about that I let myself down on for Amélie was I really tried to watch for, the references and allusions to other films because I know there's some and I couldn't really find many. Now there is a part early on where there's like a thing where she's like watching like what's the word, like footage of her own life. It's like a newsreel type thing, like for a flashback, and I think that's kind of like a Citizen Kane thing. But I know it had more going on than just that.
It's tons of like references, but I don't think a lot of film references, like lots of stuff by certain artists, and even the color palette I think is inspired by Brazilian artists. Juarez Macchiato.
Yeah, I've heard the movie has like elements of another French movie, the one that has Gerard Depardieu from Cyrano de Bergerac, but I've never seen it, so I can't say what it is. Which is a play from the late 19th century, which I haven't read, but I've heard of. So I'll have to see it at some point to see exactly how it lines up with this. I know that he's like the main thing I always remember about him is like. Yeah, he's a swashbuckler kind of guy, and he's got a big nose. Like any actor that plays him has to wear a big fake nose. Because I'm thinking, okay, she does swashbuckler stuff, but that's obviously a Zorro thing. She dresses up as Zorro. That's cool too, because early in the movie, she just has these flashes where she sees herself as Zorro. Like that, like the first time she does the gaslighting thing, and she does all the stuff in the grocer's apartment to screw with him, and then when she leaves, like suddenly it flips and she's Zorro and she does the Z on the door. But then later in the movie, she actually does dress in a Zorro costume and leaves the pictures to send to Nino. It's pretty funny. Yeah, Nino leads an interesting existence in that he works part-time at like some sort of pornography store, which also seems to feature like live like shows. But then he also like does a shift at like the carnival where he like dresses as a skeleton in the haunted house ride, which is really bizarre. So that's an interesting stuff. He's got an interesting resume. Can you imagine he like goes to like I don't know, work at like some corporate job. He's just like, well, I worked at like the sex dungeon.
Yeah.
And I was the skeleton number 2 in the haunted house in the carnival. Yeah.
Yeah, but that guy goes to sleep loving what he does for a living. He's like, man, I'm having a great life.
He doesn't have a boring life.
I have to work 2 jobs because they don't pay well, but I love my jobs. Yeah. I get to sling dildos by day and dress as a skeleton at night.
The other thing the movie made me want, and to this day I still really want it, is to have like a kind of like, like literal sort of motorbike, like a Vespa or something like that. People have them in Halifax. I see them around. I'm just like, that'd be cool. I see like one of those like little Honda bikes, like not a Vespa, but like a Honda bike. I'd be like, oh, that'd be a cool thing to just go around in and stuff like that. It would make me feel very European and stuff. And I think about it too, because again, my girlfriend in Bangkok, everybody's either on bikes or those bikes, and that's like a big part of like taxi. Like sometimes when she goes to places, she gets like a motorcycle taxi instead of a normal taxi, where you literally just sit on the back and hold on to the guy while he bikes you around. Like that's just a normal part of everyday life in Bangkok.
Yeah. I mean, it's cheaper, right? I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cheap. There's actually, going back again to films I saw at the film fest. So the Chinese movie I saw, Ash's Purest White. There's a pretty funny scene where our main character, after the whole thing is after she's gotten out of prison and she's trying to like piece her life back together, and she has almost no money and stuff, and so she gets like a ride from some motorcycle guy. It's like a bigger, more substantial motorcycle though, and he takes her to this place. And then like she's trying to find somebody, and she's completely ignoring everything he says, but he's just saying like how like he's away from his wife all this time, and hey, there's a shack over there, and they could go over there and they could totally fuck. And she's not listening to him in any shape or form and stuff like that. Then suddenly she turns and just says like, oh yeah, okay, go get ready. And he's like, what? Yeah. And she's like, yeah. So he does, and then she just steals the bike. It's pretty funny. And then, which is funny, but then it actually gets worse, because then later she winds up at the police station, and she just tells them that the guy tried to rape her, which is a complete lie, and they went and picked him up. But that's a cool movie though too. I really liked it, except it doesn't really have an ending. It just kind of stops. Is my main. It's like they got to a point where like we don't know what to do anymore. They just have like this really, in like the last 10 minutes they do like a big time skip, because most of the movie it starts like in 2001, and then it picks up in like 2006 because she spends 5 years in prison, and then there's like a huge time skip to like 2018 and then it's just like, what do we do? Roll credits. like I didn't really think the movie had an ending, but it is a really good movie.
Is that the one that was really long you were talking about?
It's not really long. It was probably the longest one I saw at the thing. No, what I remember how you're thinking. So, no, what it was, okay, so I went to see that movie, and there were only a few people in the theater, and it was an afternoon show. And the guy came, and he said, how grateful he was that we were coming to see this movie, because 1, it was a foreign movie, and 2, it was fairly long. It was, 2 hours, 40 minutes. And he said, but, if you want to see something really long and foreign, and what it was, there was this movie called, this movie called something like The Elephant That Stood Perfectly Still, or something like that, which was also a Chinese movie, and they were playing it later that night, and it was like 5 minutes short of 4 hours or something like that. Because so I think that's what you're remembering, because you were talking about that, and then we got into discussion on like some of the longest movies ever made and some of the longest movies we've seen, etc. Yada yada. Because as I've said, there is kind of a strange appeal to just say that I managed to see a movie that was such and such long, and it's actually been quite a while since I've seen one.
Yeah, it's not exactly a praise. I mean, just because it's super long doesn't mean it's going to be good.
No, I have nothing. I'm not saying anything about the movie. I mean, as a personal accomplishment.
Oh yeah.
Just to say that you saw, say, like a movie that was 4.5 hours.
Wow, that's a long one. Yeah.
You would hope it would be good, obviously, because if it's bad, it's going to feel like 12 hours. But I just mean,
like the complete version of Return of the King or something.
Yeah, and I mean that's obviously the longest movie I've ever seen in theaters, which the theatrical cut is shorter, so it's not 4 hours. But yeah, it's just about 4 hours. The thing, and I have seen. I've watched all 3 back to back at home.
Wow,
which is like 13 hours.
I don't think I've watched any of the extended cuts of any of those films.
They're good. I mean, they definitely add good stuff. Like, it's not just filler. Even really little things they add. Like, it's not just big scenes. Like, just some of them are like really little. Like in Fellowship, the first one. There's just like a part where, okay, so towards the very end where they're getting, the big attack happens and they get split up, and Sam and Frodo have to leave, and that they all get split up. But there's a part where the other hobbits, Pippin and Merry, realize when they're like, over here, Frodo, and he's like, no, he's shaking his head, and they're like over here, and it's like, oh, he's going, he wants to go. So then they very bravely realize they have to buy him time. Remember, they run out and they call to the orcs, they're like, hey, over here and stuff, and then they get chased for a little while when the orcs catch them. In the extended cut, what's kind of cool is it actually shows them bringing a few of the orcs, chasing them down by throwing rocks, which is actually mentioned in the books, that hobbits have a real talent for throwing rocks. They're very accurate and deadly. So it's only like a couple seconds, but I like it. It adds to the movie, and it shows again some allegiance to the book there.
That's cool.
It also shows that they didn't just run and do nothing. So it's not just some extended scenes. Sometimes it's just little tiny things. But it's been so long since I've seen, like, say, the theatrical cut of Return of the King that I can't remember anymore. Like, I don't remember what's added. But that's the one that obviously has the most added, because that's super long. So long.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, why don't you just leave it alone and split it into 2 movies? Which is probably what they would do now if they could do it over.
I'm kind of glad they didn't. I mean, it's trilogy. We want a trilogy of movies.
I'm just saying for time-wise. I mean, that's a long playing theatrical film.
Yeah. I mean, The Hobbit should have been 2 movies, but they were just obsessed with trilogies. They made it 3, which is ridiculous. It should have just been 2 movies. Instead, they made 3 bloated movies. The first one's quite good, and then it's
That's what I've heard. I haven't even watched them.
The first one's fine. Like, I don't think you'll have any issues with the first one. But then after that, it just gets, I don't know. They're trying too hard to add things in, especially they want to cut and paste in Orlando Bloom. They were like, hey, he's available. People want to see Legolas. Let's just stick him in there.
Like, he's available, all right. Yeah. 10 years ago, maybe not, but he is available now.
Yeah. He was a big deal for a long time. I don't know. I kind of miss him. I like him.
Yeah.
Daniel Radcliffe came along and stole all his roles.
See what Orlando Bloom's up to. I bet he's probably like just an inch above Dean Cain.
Oh, come on. At least he could say he was in something good. What could Dean Cain say he was ever in? Speaking of Dean Cain, he's going to pop up all on TV now because, I don't know about you, but I get like a women's network, and all it does now is show 24/7 bullshit made-for-TV Christmas movies, like, over and over again. Starring, like, Alison Sweeney, what's her name, Candace Cameron Bure,
So we're talking quality programming here.
And they just shit them out. I see you got into the Christmas spirit. I couldn't even fathom watching a Christmas movie right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Were you shoehorned into it by like other people or something?
No, I mean, not really. I'm ready for it now. I feel like
I'm very particular about. I'm very particular about the time I watch movies. Especially, it's the same thing as like the Halloween thing. Like, there's certain Christmas movies I have to watch every year, but there's also an order to them, and the better they are, the closer to Christmas. Like, you watched Christmas Vacation. I could never watch that. It had to be December 20th minimum.
I'm probably going to watch it like 3 more times before Christmas.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. But for me, it has to be super close to Christmas, because that's like top 5. That's like one of the essentials. Yeah. I could never watch that in November. It would weird me out. So, I don't know. On December 1st, maybe I'll celebrate and watch something.
What are some other films that you always watch?
Oh, my essentials? Okay, here we go. This is easy. Okay, so the absolute essentials are Christmas Vacation, Scrooged, the 1951, A Christmas Carol. That's the one with Alistair Sim. Now, that comes on TV in black and white and color, so either version is acceptable. The 1938 one is good too, but it's not as high up, so I can see that earlier. That's actually really short too. The 38 version, that's like an hour and 10 minutes or something. That just flies by. Wow. It's super short. What What's another one of the big ones? Hold on. My favorite, and this breaks my heart because I didn't see this last year. I own it on DVD, but what's the point of watching a Christmas movie on DVD? I've said this before, and people have heard me. That's the only time I prefer to watch a movie on TV with commercials is Christmas. It's the only time. The other time I'd be like, "What? That's ridiculous." But Christmas, it just feels right and organic.
Sure.
Even though nowadays the commercials aren't what they were,
Right.
it's not what they were. But anyway, that movie is One Magic Christmas, which nobody's ever heard of, but it's actually a Disney movie. It's a Disney movie, and it's so depressing. It's super depressing. Now it ends fine. It's also the first movie. This isn't why I like it. This is just a coincidence. It's also the first movie that Sarah Polley was ever in. She's like 5 years old in it,
Wow.
but she's not the main character. The main character is like a 5-year-old girl, but it's not her. It's a different girl. But anyway, it's One Magic Christmas. It's about a family that basically falls apart as the holidays approach because they're dealing with all sorts of like financial problems and stuff like that. And what's his name? Harry Dean Stanton plays an angel that helps her out and stuff. I can't remember who the mother is, but she's in things.
Yeah, Mary Steenburgen.
Mary Steenburgen, back when she's still kind of pretty.
Yeah.
But anyway, I adore that movie, even though it's so depressing. Which makes sense, because even though it's not a Canadian film, it feels like one because it was shot in Southern Ontario. And it has various Canadian actors in it, like Sarah Polley. Not that she was anything to write home about that time. But
I was going to say, I bet it was filmed in Canada.
Oh, yeah. This was mid-'80s Southern Ontario. There are feet of snow. Like, people talk about climate change, like, yeah, it's fucking real. Because when I was a kid, feet of snow was just a given. And nowadays, we've had so many green Christmases in the last like 15 years. It's ridiculous. The last few have turned around, and actually, we're supposed to have a pretty snowy winter this winter. But still, like, winter has come here, and I've had a few really cold days. Like, I'm only wearing this sweater for effect. Like, it's actually quite warm out right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, One Magic Christmas is my absolute favorite. I adore that movie for whatever reason. I think part of it is nostalgia because I saw it when I was very, very, very young. But what's weird is I could always see it on TV because it would show up on CBC or something because it is a Canadian movie, so or it has Canadian elements, so they would show it. But I haven't seen it on TV for at least 2-3 years, so that breaks my heart. What else? There's at least 2 or 3 other big essentials. Again, it comes down to specials. The same rule as with Halloween. Garfield, Peanuts. Those are just, to me, those are masterpieces. Particularly Peanuts. What's weird is, and there's even a few specials of things that I hate that I'll accept just because. I never liked the Flintstones. Now, I don't like the first Christmas special, but there's a second Christmas special where it's the Flintstones Christmas Carol. That's actually pretty decent. It's the only Flintstones things I've ever liked. It's the Flintstones. It's weird too. It's weird how the setup is. So the setup is Fred is playing Scrooge in a production of A Christmas Carol, which must blow your mind. It's how could there be a Christmas Carol? Anyway, don't logically try to figure it out. They're trying to make it seem like, yes, we had a 19th century with Charles Dickens too. I don't know. But anyway, and what's weird is he gets so deep into the role that people say he's acting like a real Scrooge. And so, you get to see him in the play, but you also see the stuff going around. Anyway, it's not too bad. It's the only, and the biggest exception ever, and I don't really like it, and I don't care if I see it, but I will watch it, and this is, now we're into hate territory. I hate most of that Hanna-Barbera shit. So there's a 1980 special called Yogi's First Christmas with Yogi Bear, and it is terrible too. But if it comes on around Christmas, I'll watch it out of habit. But it's really bad. It also has one of the most annoying voices I've ever heard in cartoons. So there's this. So they go to stay at some lodge. It's called Yogi's First Christmas because he always used to hibernate through Christmas, but now he's gonna be up and experience Christmas.
Okay.
There's some lodge. So there's some stupid woman who owns the lodge, and she has this nephew who's this little kid, and they make him the biggest little snot ever. He's just the whole time. He's basically the villain of it. And he has the worst voice. And if you ever hear it, I know you'll recognize it. You've heard it in other cartoons, probably Hanna-Barbera cartoons. It makes you want to kill myself hearing that kid's voice. Honestly, it's ridiculous. Yeah. But I guess those are the absolute essentials. There's definitely a few, and then around the fringes, there's movies that, they come on, so I'll watch them. I'll watch Jingle All the Way. It's not good, but I'll watch it. I still like the Home Alones. They have not aged well, but I still enjoy them. You know.
Yeah, the part 2 is one that my wife is obsessed with, so we always watch that one. But part 1's the one I really like. But in part 2, he always has that damn tape recorder with him.
Yeah,
and that's the most dated thing of the whole movie, I think.
I know. The movie was basically a commercial for that. The Talk Boy.
Yeah,
like, look at all the great stuff you can do with your Talk Boy. You can totally screw with people.
I just like to watch those movies and count how many times a normal person would have died. Like,
I know. Like, he's so brutal, the stuff he does. The worst one is, like, near the beginning of the second one, like, before the stuff even starts, where he just simply huffs bricks at them off a roof. Could you imagine what that would actually do to a person?
Every time I say the same thing.
Skull. Be like...
I mean, it's like 5 stories. He's throwing bricks at people, and...
I mean, if your head is here and somebody drops a brick on you, like a foot, that could kill you. And he's huffing a brick, like 5 stories up.
And
Marv is like the most hard-headed. He has a titanium skull, apparently.
It would cave your skull in, like, you would be unrecognizable as a human.
Yeah, like, even if he only got clipped, it would be the end of him. But yeah, they really up the violence, as they often do. It's kind of like a slasher sequel. It's like up the violence. Like, people love the violence, up the violence, because like some of the stuff he did in the first one, it's pretty brutal and would definitely kill you or maim you. In this, it's like every single thing is like deadly force. But trying to think, what else is there?
I like the Mickey's Christmas Carol. It was pretty good.
Yeah. What's so funny about that is, like, okay, so I'm, big Disney person, and now in the last few years, especially, I've really gotten into the classic Carl Barks comics, the Duck stuff.
Oh, right.
For most of my life, now I grew up watching the original DuckTales. I love DuckTales. When I was a kid and I watched DuckTales, I thought that honestly, I thought that Uncle Scrooge had been invented in 1983. For some reason, I knew the year, which is the year of Mickey's Christmas Carol. I thought they made Mickey's Christmas Carol, so like, okay, let's just invent a Scrooge character. Like, I didn't know until I was an adult that, like, Carl Barks invented Scrooge in 1948.
I thought the exact same thing. Like, and they took him and they put him in DuckTales from that character.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But no, he was invented in 1948. And and it took almost more than 20 years before he showed up in an animated short. He did eventually find his way into some animated stuff in the 60s, although I, for some reason, didn't see that. But yeah, that's honestly what I thought. But anyway, that one always stood with me. That's super fast, too. That's like 20 minutes. That goes...
Right. Yeah, it's over with.
But I haven't seen that in a few years, actually, because that doesn't seem to come on TV. Obviously, I'll watch The Grinch, the special. That's what's out in theaters now, is the new Grinch, which I'm sure is probably okay. Like, nothing.
I have zero desire to see it, but I'm sure it's decent.
I'm sure it's okay. And I mean, the bar is super low because I know people defend the Jim Carrey movie. That movie is an abomination. Like, I don't have strong enough words for how terrible and awful that movie is. And it's horrifying to look at. Its comedy is all off kilter and wrong. Like, I have no positive things to say about that movie. I think it's an awful crime. I think it's a crime that movie exists. It makes me sick.
It's Ron Howard, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Jim Carrey is the perfect choice, and I think he did a good job playing a cartoon character. But
he's written all wrong.
It's not something that needs to.
I think Jim Carrey could have done it, but I think the way they got him to play it is bullshit. I don't know.
I just mean the look, but
I hate the look.
Oh, really?
Well, they went way too literal. Like, it's okay when you see the Who's on TV, like animated, they look fine. But when you actually make a person look like they don't have a top lip or whatever, it's crazy terrifying.
Yeah, it's
that little girl, Cindy Lou. Like, everybody's got like no top lip. They're all like, it's awful, man. And I don't know. They have like this whole backstory of how when he was a kid, he had a crush on a girl, and now he hates everybody because of like what the fuck are you doing? So I'm sure the new movie doesn't do anything like that. So I have no desire to see it either, but I'm sure it has to be way better than that. Yeah, no, I can't even talk about that movie. That movie makes me angry. I hate that it exists. I hate it. I hate it. I hate almost all the Doctor Zeus movies. Like, I've never actually been stupid enough to like sit through Cat in the Hat, but I've seen the highlights. I've seen how fucking bad it is.
It's
you got Mike Myers like going dirty hoe, like holding a hoe. Jesus Christ.
I mean, it's not meant to be live action.
No,
and don't make it live action.
No, it's not. And they change the humor and skewer it all and add like weird adults only in jokes and stuff. Like, fuck, don't do that.
Yeah, Cat in the Hat's full of that, and I've only seen parts of it.
Like Alec Baldwin like shot through like a wild angle lens. Nobody wants to see that. Holy Christ.
But I mean, it's the same thing Disney's doing with all their, live action films. Now they're doing a live action Lion King.
They're doing them competently. I'm not saying they're better. Like, me, I love animation. I think the animation is superior. I just watched the live action Beauty and the Beast the other day. It's pretty good. Like, it has stuff you don't need, and there are a few things that don't translate. Like, for instance, the creatures, the teapots and so on. They don't look good. They look scary because they couldn't. They could animate them with nice faces. In this, they have like terrifying, like blank faces. Like you look at Mrs. Potts, and it's like terrifying.
Yeah,
she has like this weird, just like line for a mouth. And I remember, I watched this the other day because I think it's one of our better shows, and it's also what I was thinking about when I was saying because I was on a Disney kick. Was we did last year around this time do like the oddest. The weirdest Disney movie of all, which is The Black Hole. I remember you're talking about how like the robots had like dead eyes, and you found it really off-putting and stuff like that. But that's kind of how I feel about like how some of those characters like the candelabra and the teapots and stuff like that, they've got like dead eyes staring at you. But anyway, I think that's good. I don't know. I'm sure the Aladdin will be good. Everybody's losing their mind over the Lion King. Now, Lion King isn't live action. Isn't that a lie? That's not a lion.
Sure.
That's not a lion. That's not a warthog. It's just
it's meant to look like. Yeah. I mean, I know it's all CGI, right? But
yeah, so that's not live action. But anyway, it seems pretty cool. I mean, it was. I guess they realized they just couldn't do any better than Mufasa, so they brought him back, which is really strange.
Oh, James Earl Jones is the voice.
James Earl Jones is still Mufasa. I mean, everything else is totally different, but he's still Mufasa.
I'm fine with that.
And I mean,
he's
went
awesome.
For most of the cast is African American, which makes sense. It has an African vibe.
Sure.
I mean, it's from Africa, so I'm fine with that. I don't know. I'm glad the internet wasn't around back then, so people could flip out about like Jonathan Taylor Thomas being in it. Like, he's playing a lion.
Because
there's no proper ethnicity to cast in that role. He's a lion.
We've got to whitewash. We've got to whitewash the.
You're whitewashing the animals.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's why I tweeted. I was like, they brought back James Earl Jones, but not poor Jonathan Taylor Thomas. This sucks.
Well, he not his singing voice because that was someone else singing.
That was a black kid, by the way.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Gonna be a mighty king. I might have even said this one to you before. So speaking of like weird coincidences. So the adult Simba, of course, is in the original.
I don't remember.
I remember. I just can't remember his name. Ferris Bueller.
Oh, Matthew.
Yeah.
I want to say Broderick.
Matthew Broderick. Yes. So Matthew Broderick is adult Simba. But just like Jonathan Taylor Thomas, he is not the singing voice of adult Simba. The singing voice of adult Simba was not the first, not the second, but the third lead singer of the band Africa. I find that funny.
Again, a bunch of white guys, right? Or the band Africa?
Yeah, they're a bunch of white guys.
False advertising.
Or not the band Africa, I'm sorry. The band that does Africa. The band Toto.
Oh, Toto, right.
I said the band Africa. Sorry about that, people. Yeah, but I mean, their big hit that they're known for is Africa. So I find that a little funny that a guy whose main job was to sing the song Africa would be the adult Simba.
There is a band called Africa, isn't it?
Probably. There's a band called Asia. There's a band called Europe.
Maybe I'm...
There's a band called America, or there was. They were a good band. The band's called Boston in Chicago.
Yeah, people are not very creative.
I'm sure there's an Africa band. Like I said, there's Europe, there's Asia. Why not Africa? Gonna take a lot to drag me away from you.
Yeah, when Beauty and the Beast came out, not Beauty and the Beast. When The Lion King came out, I was a little too old to be watching Disney movies. And then when it was finally released on VHS, I remember I may have even been driving. I drove up there and secretly bought the VHS, kind of kept it hidden.
I was pretty much target audience, I was 10 or 11 when it came out. And, so even tougher kids my age, they'd still admit it. They'd be like, yeah, fuck, even they would admit they watched Lion King.
Yeah.
Lion King's awesome, man. I mean,
I was definitely, I wouldn't want to be caught by my buddies watching Lion King.
Yeah. I'll tell you something personal about how that movie kind of drove me insane at the time later when we're off air. Because it's a secret, people. You won't get to know. But that movie had a sort of profound effect on me personally for a few years in a way that I didn't like. But anyway.
Have you seen the live-action Jungle Book?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
And that's Jon Favreau. He's the same one who's going to direct Lion King. So I guess maybe he has a feel for directing CG animals.
I don't have a problem with Jon Favreau.
But yeah, so far I've liked the live-action ones fine, except for Cinderella. It's not good. I mean, it looks beautiful. It's breathtaking to look at, but it's
forgot about that one.
That's Kenneth Branagh or whatever he is. Yeah, that was kind of the stealth one before they hit us with a big one in Beauty and the Beast. Not that Cinderella isn't big, but it just didn't feel big. But but now when they're showing teasers for Aladdin and Lion King, people are like, "Oh shit!" They're like, "I can't believe." I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
I'm sure Aladdin will be good, but I still can't wrap my head around Will Smith as the genie.
I don't like that casting, but I don't like Will Smith, so that's.
I'm glad that he's been gone for the last few years because, in the late to mid 2000s, he was in fucking everything.
He's not gone. He's still making movies.
I've had a good break from him. I haven't seen him in a movie in 7 years.
He's not making good movies anymore, but.
I mean, yeah. Well, After Earth was his first real big failure. All his movies went number one. They went straight to number one immediately. After Earth not only didn't do that, but it completely tanked.
Well, that was I think his studio did that.
And he what did he do? He did a movie called Concussion, which sounds super boring.
And that was the Oscar So White. The reason why Oscar So White went viral because
he didn't get a
nomination.
See, I think that's stupid. Now, I'm going to say something that isn't fair because I haven't seen the movie. So maybe it's really good. But to me, Oscar So White certainly had a point, but that should not have been what kicked it off. Because you're telling me that Will Smith gave some sort of tour de force performance in a movie about the NFL and concussions? Come on.
For the past 20 years, Will Smith has been trying to win an Oscar. We all know it. We all have seen the movies he's making. It's Oscar fodder.
Yeah,
he's trying to.
That's what he was trying with Ali. That was the big one.
And
he played Muhammad Ali.
The homeless person. We talked about this recently.
Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it in theater. I have no idea why. It's not bad. It's just not good either. It's
not a bad film.
It leaves no impression. And I hate movies that are based on true stories that really fuck with the facts. And that movie totally fucks with the facts. It wasn't nearly as dramatic as they make it seem. For instance, for one thing, it actually was a paid internship. I'm not saying he made a ton of money. An internship, you're not going to make much money. But in the movie, it's no money. No, actually, it was paid. And that seems like a pretty important detail to change. But anyway.
Yeah, here's a movie you did see him in, Bright.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
That was a Netflix movie, though, so I don't know if I can really count it.
I know Netflix will be very disappointed to hear that.
Hey, I like Netflix, and I use it all the time. But to me, a measuring stick of a movie is still a theatrical release.
Really? So would you say that it wouldn't qualify, to be considered for an Oscar?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm not saying Netflix can't make good movies. I don't know, man.
I mean, I guarantee that movie was probably watched by.
Well, at this point in my life, maybe things will change. But at this point in my life, I've seen some Netflix original movies that I thought were pretty good. But none have I seen where I thought, oh yeah, like that should win an Oscar, or the actor in it should get an Oscar. Like,
we're gonna get there at some point soon, I would think, though.
Yeah, sure, because they keep pumping them out.
Just because I think the environment has changed, so you really can't use the, how many screens did this get shown on?
Oh, I know. We're dinosaurs for caring that much about theatrical releases, and it's not like, and I mean, the easy counterpoint to that is like a lot of crap gets released in theaters. Yes, of course it does. Yeah. But still, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I liked Bright. I know I liked it a lot more than you did.
It felt like that other movie he did, except like with monsters instead of normal people.
Bad Boys?
End of Watch.
Oh, End of Watch, yeah.
It just felt like a different version of End of Watch, and I don't like End of Watch either. I was bored to death by that movie. And I just thought the whole like racism like allegory thing they had going on in Bright was really clunky. And flawed too, because they didn't really do it right.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah,
it was really mixed up, their message about that, because they were like, okay, like people are like prejudiced against orcs, and they think that orcs are always violent and stuff like that. But then they kind of prove it to be true in some cases, and I don't know. Weird.
You're not a big Max Landis fan either, are you?
I don't. Who is that?
John Landis' son, the writer.
I didn't know he did stuff. What did he? Oh, maybe I'm not a fan. Like I guess I've seen his work. What have I seen that he's written?
Well, he did American Ultra also.
I thought that was okay. Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that movie's fine. I actually watched that only a couple of weeks ago for some reason. I don't have any problem with that movie.
He wrote Chronicle.
Yeah, I didn't like Chronicle. Yeah, I absolutely disliked Chronicle.
Oh, God. They're doing a remake of American Werewolf in London. He wrote the screenplay for. Ugh.
It seems weird that they haven't already done that. You think they would have done that like 10 years ago?
I mean, they did Paris. I guess that is flopped hard enough to where they didn't.
One good thing came out of the movie Paris. There was something
The
good.
The Bush song. I was going to say.
Yeah, the remix of Mouth.
That was
one of the few times where the remix is better than the original version. You can't say that.
That's an awesome song, yeah.
But the remix of Mouth is it. Remember, they had a whole album of remixes. I never actually got it, but Ryan did, and we used to listen to it all the time. But that was easily the best one. But that's one of the times where I can't even listen to the original song because I'm just like, oh, it's missing I need the remix stuff from Mouth. But yeah, all your mental armor drags me down.
That's probably like the last like good stuff by Bush, even though I've bought a few more of their CDs since, or albums since.
Yeah, I bought Golden State, and it's bland and crappy. And that's like from a million years ago.
I think they broke up and got back together.
Yeah, a lot of the bands from that same era did the same thing. You know who I was listening to the other day from kind of that well, they were a little later than that, was Lifehouse. Remember Lifehouse? Mm-hmm. They started out so strong. Their first album is amazing. I love that album, No Name Face.
Yeah, I saw Lifehouse at a show one time.
Oh, that's awesome. Like around what year?
This was kind of like when they were already going down. When they weren't. Yeah. This was probably like late 90s.
They came out in 2000. They were a 2000s band.
It must have been 2000s then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it must have been early 2000s.
Because the first album is really awesome. The second album was like a commercial flop, and it was different from all their other albums. So it was more heavy and stuff. I still like it. I like it. I respect it. And then after that, they started moving in like a radio-friendly direction, which has produced some good stuff and some bad stuff. I've heard that their latest album from like 2016 is really good, and that's what I was thinking about the other day. I was like, I need to listen to some of that and see if it's actually any good. What's really weird is, so by like the third album, they replaced their bassist, and he's like some Canadian guy. Mm-hmm. But on the latest album, he writes and sings his own song, which is really weird. Like, because they're not that kind of band, you know. You always had like the main guy writing the songs and singing the song. They suddenly has like a weird like oddity. You have a track by the other guy singing and stuff. I'm always interested in that when that happens in a band.
Yeah,
that's a rare thing.
The Chili Peppers have done it a few times, where Flea's done a track.
Yeah.
Always turned out pretty well. Flea's a talented guy.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at Razorblade Suitcase, 96, and Science of Things, 99.
Yeah, that really even wasn't that good.
Yeah,
like, they only really made 2.5 good albums.
I'm not even seeing that remix album on here.
It should be, yeah. That was like 97.
Right after Razorblade Suitcase.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was about it. Hell, I've bought quite a few of these that weren't any good.
They had a really weird lead single. What was it? The Chemicals Between Us. Like, that third album, they really tried to go different, and I don't think it worked. But, yeah.
You know what I'm thinking about? He had another band, Gavin Rossdale. He had another band he came out with that I bought the album for that.
Yeah, that's right. I never heard any of their stuff. That's what he did a few years ago. Well, basically, he didn't have much to do. He was just, like, raking in the money from Gwen Stefani.
I got to figure out what the name of that band was now.
Yeah, I never heard any of it.
Institute.
Yeah, that sounds right. No, I've never heard a single one of their songs. I don't know. He has such a specific vocal delivery and such a specific lyric. I can't imagine them sounding that different from Bush, really.
Are they British or they're
British.
London. Okay, cool. Yeah. I was always a big fan of Bush. They're one of my favorites.
They're like the best band of like the post grunge movement, probably. Mm-hmm. I'd say, and there were a lot of them, but I'd say they're the best. And I was a big fan of post grunge, like Fuel. I loved Fuel.
Fuel's good.
They finally reunited with their original singer because he was gone for the last few albums. Brett Scallions.
Silverchair. You like Silverchair?
I'm pretty predictable when it comes to Silverchair, in that once the 90s were over, I kind of didn't, like what they were doing anymore. But I was a huge Silverchair fan back in the day. I didn't just like them; I loved them. And I think I love but the third album's my favorite, Neon Ballroom. I fucking love Neon Ballroom. I was that's one of the first albums of my life that like I anticipated the release of. Like I could not wait for Neon Ballroom to come out. And it was such an ambitious album because like their first two albums were sort of like garage rock.
Right.
Like really good garage rock, but fairly simple, guitar, bass, drums. This, they were like, let's add all the bells and whistles. They brought in like a well-celebrated classical pianist. He was Australian too. And I remember, I think on TV they had like a little sort of semi-documentary about the making of. So like showed like him, they do like recordings out at his house. Him and his wife would be there and he'd be playing like he was like already like in his like late 60s. And yet he played the piano like a motherfucker and stuff. And, and they added all this orchestral stuff. Like my favorite song is really orchestral. It's Emotion Sickness. It's got big like strings parts to it. I love that. But yeah, once they got a bit older, and that's what weird. They were an oddity because they were so young. They were 16 when the first album came out, all of them. So they were like barely into their 20s when they were like changing. And I was like, I don't care anymore.
Well, I mean, strangely enough, they have a huge following for their like new stuff. Like
I should give it a chance because I mean,
kind of changed their sound from more of an alternative to not really folksy. I don't know what you would call it, a softer rock.
Well, they had a weird in between period because I can remember as long ago as say like 2003, 2004. By this time, I'd already sort of lost track of them. One of my friends like showed me some of their videos and stuff like that, and they were going for more of like a trippy kind of psychedelic experimental thing. I can't remember. He showed it to the video to me. It was really weird. Like Daniel Johns, or whatever his name is, he looked like an elf. Like he looked like Legolas in the video. It was really weird. And there were all these colors swirling around him. And I was like, I don't know about this. Like it looks like he's doing like a psychedelic phase. Yeah. And I remember even around that time too. And I remember reading an article where he was talking about how like he didn't even really like playing the stuff from the 90s anymore because he had a hard time relating to that part of his life. He's like I was 16, like I'm not, I'm a grown person now. It's hard to relate to what I was like when I was 16, but people want to still hear that same music.
Yeah.
But years ago, we always talk about like channels were better. I'm sure it was the same thing with MTV. When I watched Much Music was much better and had, you know, shows about music and wasn't just a bunch of reality garbage.
Good.
One of the best things that Much Music had was a show they would show on Saturday nights called The Big Ticket, where they would literally show a live concert, a whole live concert, like brilliantly done. And in 99 or something, they had a big ticket for Silverchair, so it was right for their tour for Neon Ballroom. It was a Neon Ballroom tour, and it was so badass. It was like one of the best things I've ever seen. Like I wish I could see it again to DVR it or something like that. And I remember they even did a cover too. They did a cover of the MC5 song "Kick Out the Jams," and he did a really good job of it.
I was watching this film, Wish Upon a Star, the other day with my kids, and it's from '96. And at one point, they're watching.
I looked it up, and it had like a whole bunch of like actresses that are like kind of famous now.
Well, Danielle Harris is really the primary reason I wanted to watch it.
Right.
But it's the weird thing about that movie is, I forget whoever the comedy romance, Katherine Heigl. Right. She plays the older sister, and Danielle Harris is her younger sister. But Danielle Harris is actually older, like 2 years older than Katherine Heigl in real life. So
that's really weird.
She's just such a tiny person that she was able to pull it off. But at one point, they were watching a music video, and I said, "That's not a real music video," because I could tell you every music video that came on in '96. Like,
yeah,
I was glued to MTV. Like, music was the biggest thing in my life at that time, you know. So
yeah, same here.
I can, you know, you're probably the same way. You could, you know, see a flash of a video and tell you what band it was.
Yeah, pretty much. As long as it was, like rock and alternative and stuff like that. I mean, certainly some of that hip hop and pop that I didn't care about is still ingrained into my mind just because it was everywhere, right? So
I mean, I watched the crap I didn't like. I still watched it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have options like we do now.
Yeah.
I would watch MTV like all night. So it's crazy, you know. It's hard for younger people to understand.
Yeah.
But I don't think music is even as big in our culture as it was then, because you know,
certainly nobody cares about albums anymore. You know, you might care like a song here and there, but like nobody sits down and puts on an album or thinks about like what the album like is stylistically or thematically or anything. You know, that's all gone. Like, there's no point. Like, people can try to still release albums like that, but nobody really wants to absorb them in that way.
I mean, just like the artwork and the linear notes and, all that stuff. I was into all of that.
Yeah, all I cared about all the details.
I mean, you're actually a musician. I'm not talented musically at all, but I was really into music, and it's really just explaining it now to someone who wasn't there wouldn't understand. But it's like you anticipated a release date. He said this, and now albums come out that I actually care about. I don't even know. Oh, okay, that came out 2 weeks ago. I didn't even know it was out yet.
Yeah.
It's just a completely different environment.
Yeah, I was super detail oriented, like especially with the bands, my favorite bands, because like I wanted to know if one of the band members was maybe going to play an instrument they didn't usually play, stuff like that, or who did the backup singing on it, because I was always more of a fan of bands, because there were a lot of bands out there. They had a lead singer who was a good enough singer, but he was the only one in the band that could even carry a tune. So on the album, when there was backup singing or anything with an echo, all they did was overlay his same voice.
Oh wow!
It was just himself, right? And I was never a fan of that. I always liked the bands that had band members that could actually contribute real backup singing with different voices. So I always watched for that kind of thing. My favorite band was Moist, so I was always like very aware of the fact that David was the singer. But Jeff did most of the backup singing. But Kevin, the keyboardist, he did backup singing, but only on certain tracks. Only certain tracks required a second backup singer. So, and they all had very distinct voices. They didn't have similar voices at all. All three had different voices and stuff like that. So I was always just sort of hyper aware of things like that. And it's funny, I I don't know if I'm going to shell out the $32 or if I'm going to run out of stuff again. But I think I told you back, like in the spring, I saw one of my favorite bands, Sloan, and I was almost a little disappointed by the performance. Not that they weren't great, but it was their tour was actually down in the States, and they came up for this show just specifically because they were doing the East Coast Music Awards, and I think their set was a bit short because they came directly from their little set at the East Coast Music Awards, did that. So I was disappointed. Now they're coming back again, and they're doing a show in early December. And I don't know, it might even be sold out by now. I've been following on Twitter. They've been selling it in other places. And basically, I'm thinking, is it worth going again? Like, are they going to really change up the set? Because they're still promoting the same album. Like, this is promoting their newest album. And the other little complaint I might have is, like, I like the new stuff, but, like, they didn't play anything. They played one song from the 90s. One. And this is a band that's been active since 92. So they have a lot of, you know, stuff from back then that I loved. And they didn't play any of it. So I'm thinking, but is this the song? I'm thinking, now this is the main thing. Like, are they going to play the old stuff? But anyway, my point about that is, like, Sloan are a real oddity as a band in a lot of ways. One is that they've just been together forever and they've never changed. They're four guys, and that's it. It's been constant. But the other thing that makes them different is they are four guys who write songs independently, and each one contributes songs to the album, and they sing lead on their own songs.
Oh, wow.
So that makes them very different. So they're kind of like the Beatles, except they're actually, I'm not comparing them talent-wise or anything, but efficiently, they're way more efficient than the Beatles because they've managed to not only spread out the songwriting more effectively than the Beatles and actually have their songwriting talent be more balanced, which again isn't fair. Like, okay, obviously Ringo couldn't write songs as well as Paul or John. Like, that's not even fair. Whereas the drummer writes pretty good songs, actually. So the drummer, Andrew, when he writes a song, he doesn't play drums on it. Chris, the bassist, he'll go back and play drums, and they'll switch the guitars around, and Andrew will play one of the guitars. Anyway, it's kind of confusing if you don't know it. But if you're somebody like me, you know who everybody is and where they play, right. And you know exactly how they're going to move around when they're switching. It's like Andrew's going to come up front, Chris is going to go back there, Jay will take over bass, etc. You know, that kind of thing.
Well, it also speaks to the talent of the guys, because not everybody can just pick up another instrument and be competent.
So they're really talented. And what's cool is they all have besides even their voices, if you know the band, you recognize like a Chris song and how it's different from Patrick's song and stuff like that. Chris is the one who's best sort of like the poppy hooks. So a lot of their singles are Chris songs. The usual lineup is Chris on bass, Jay on guitar, Jay on guitar, Patrick on lead guitar, and Andrew on drums. And then you move them around. But Andrew is kind of, his songs are the quirky, weird ones, kind of folky. Patrick is the rocker. His songs are always sort of like rocky songs. And then Jay's are the softer, kind of more introspective, lighter songs. So it's very easy to like tell them apart and stuff like that. So they're really interesting to watch from that perspective too. So I'm going back and forth to see if I want to go. It's only like, it's $32. I'd like to see them again. I don't know, because I barely ever get to see shows anymore. But it is kind of weird to think I get to see two shows this year, and it's both Sloan, and it's both probably a very similar set list. I mean,
when else are you going to have that opportunity, you know?
Well, that's the other thing. Since after Gord Downie died, Gord Downie from the Tragically Hip, I realized that I had fucking taken the Tragically Hip for granted. That I'd had many opportunities over the years to see them and cheaped out or whatever. It was like, I'll catch them next time. You know, I realized you just can't do that anymore.
Right.
Bands break up, people die, you know. So, because like when the Tragically Hip when Tragically Hip ended after Gord Downie died, I realized I hadn't seen them since 2005, even though I'd had multiple opportunities to see them over the years. So I've sit down thinking, don't do that with Sloan. God knows what's going to happen. Like, it's been too perfect. They've had no hiatuses, no breakups, no roster changes. It's been too perfect. Something's going to happen. You should see them. And plus, they have the appeal of they're a Halifax band. That's what they were. They were a Halifax band. They're the biggest, most successful Halifax band there's ever been. So obviously, I'm too young to have caught them when they were coming up.
Right.
But you know, they had a really weird coming up too, because they signed to Geffen. And their first album is different from all the albums are different, but the first album is much grungier and has like a lot of fuzz and stuff to it. Right. So like back in the early 90s when, you know, the grunge thing was going hard and stuff like that, like, you know, certain like music magazines would have like little articles on Sloan, and they would call them Canada's Nirvana or the Nirvana of the East, which is so wrong because they're nothing at all like Nirvana. But the fact was they had that album and they were signed to Geffen.
Right.
Sidebar to that, on their second album, which is often considered their best, Twice Removed, 1994, often consistently voted as the greatest Canadian album of all time. I disagree, but it is a very good album. It has a song called Pen Pals. That song was written basically because when they were still on the Geffen label during the recording of this album, they had access to all sorts of Geffen stuff, including, I guess, they had entire rooms, because this is the height of Nirvana's fame. This is 92, 93, before Kurt died, where people from all over the world were writing fan mail like mad to Nirvana. And obviously there was way too much of it for Nirvana to actually like read. So they just had entire rooms just full of discarded fan mail. So Sloan had access to this. I don't know if they really were supposed to, but they had. So they go into the room and they go through it. And the song is basically based on those letters. The idea is it's letters these are from kids from different countries. So like it's all written in weird broken English. And so the song is full of stuff like that. It says stuff like, I am crazy for you. Or of you, I mean. Yeah, they say, I am crazy of you. And, you know, lines like that. But that's what it comes from. It comes from Nirvana fan letters, which I think is really funny.
Wow, yeah, that is cool.
But yeah, I still care. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I have the time to play piano. I feel really bad. I've said many times. It's my big regret in life is that, like, when I was a kid, from the time I was 5 until I was 17, I took piano lessons, and I didn't appreciate it or like it for 1 second of it. I half-assed it wherever I could. I cut corners wherever I could. If I get away with not practicing, you bet I didn't practice. If I could get out of something, I didn't do it. Meanwhile, my sister's going to the festival and stuff. They say, Aaron, do you want to do the festival? I was like, hell no. No. Like, then I go to college, and then, like, about 2 years pass, and I'm, like, 20. I suddenly realize I love the piano, like, more than anything, and I hate that I, like, didn't try.
Right.
And now I've spent my adult years trying to get better, except, like, months will go by where I don't even touch the thing. So I'm just like, I hate myself. Because that's the other thing. I had musical talent as a sax player. I had musical talent. I don't have musical talent as a piano player. All my everything I accomplished as a pianist, and I was pretty decent by the time I was like 15, it was only practice. It was only because of practice. Like, I had no natural ability for piano. So anytime I did something properly or, played a song well or something, it was because I practiced the shit out of it. I didn't have a natural ability. But with the sax, I do. With this, even though I haven't played that in years. With the sax, my fingers just sort of knew where to go. I could improvise. I could sight read. I could, play stuff by memory. My fingers just sort of knew where to go. Like, the piano, you think it should be easy. You can look, you see the keys are right in front of you. And yet my fingers do not know where to go instinctively. I need to be guided. And then it takes practice. And it's always been a disappointment. The last few years, I always think about trying to take lessons again. I don't know. There's places around where I could. Because I need a taskmaster. I need somebody to, like, crack the whip and make me do it. And part of the reason is, like, for something like piano, especially, I don't know how it goes with, like, a guitar or something, but you really need to know your scales. And there's nothing more boring and repetitive and annoying than practicing scales. But if you have a good command of scales, then, like, the rest sort of falls into place. And that was another thing I hated. I hated scales. I hated doing the intervals where you'd be like da 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 da.
I think everyone hates piano lessons. I mean, it's just part of it. Yeah, I took for I think 3 years. My sister took for like 10 years, but my brother took for quite a while, and he actually went on to play the sax, and he was really good. And he's actually a talented guy musically. I'm not, but my parents were like, look, just take it for a few years. The one thing you'll get out of it is you'll learn how to read music, and that's true. I did, and I went on to play the trumpet poorly.
Yeah. No, I got pretty involved, so I picked up other instruments like in a casual way. Like, obviously, I can play pretty much any woodwind because it's not too hard. I mean, I don't have a flute here anymore. I used to have my sister's flute, and I could play it because even though obviously the mouth stuff is different. If you play alto sax, it's the same. Your hands are here, now they're just here. But the notes are the same, so that was an easy thing to do. Although, I still had a problem with the flute because to hit high notes, there's no, like, to go up to the higher register, there's no octave key. you change it by how you blow. And
Really?
I had a lot of trouble with that. Like that, I didn't grow up having to do that. So like if I really concentrated, I could jump up to the higher register, but it took hard concentration. But I don't have the flute anymore anyway. But yeah, when I used to play in other bands and even some garage bands, you know, I'd be around drum kits. So I would never say I can play the drums, but I could competently play some beats. Like I could get behind the set and go, do your beat.
Right.
I could do that. You know, I could you know, do a fill. You know, very simple. You know, I could do that, but I haven't sat behind a drum kit in like 15 years. So I doubt I could even get my hands and feet going anymore.
Yeah.
And I was a good singer. I'm still a good singer, but I don't really have much of an outlet for it.
Those guys that are really good at drums, man, they make it look easy.
Oh man, drumming is so hard
easy
to be so coordinated.
Like playing a double bass. Oh man, so cool.
Yeah. Speaking of Toto, even though a lot of people think of them as like a one-hit wonder that did Africa, they're actually like revered even amongst bands as like super proficient musicians.
Really? Wow.
And one of the things like I learned years ago, I remember I typed into the internet. I wanted to find out like what were good songs to use if you wanted to test out speakers or headphones. Like, you know, what are songs that will bring that out so you know the speakers are good or the headphones are good. And a song that often gets brought up is their other kind of hit that was always overshadowed by Africa. It's called Rosanna. Now, Rosanna, all you have to do is listen to the first 30 seconds to know whether your speakers are any good, because everything in a song that can happen happens in the first 30 seconds of Rosanna. And the thing that Rosanna is most known for is its incredibly complex drum beat. Like, check it out on YouTube or something when you get a chance. You can even find like videos of people trying to master this drum beat because it is so insanely hard. But yeah, really great song.
Wow. I thought, yeah, Toto's kind of like a joke, isn't it? Like, I mean, not to say anything negative about the band, but.
Well, like I said, they're usually considered like one-hit wonders. Oh, okay, they did Africa, you know, but they're insanely talented musicians, and they've gotten some press in the last year because Weezer did a cover of Africa, and so they were like, okay, we'll do a cover of Hash Pipe. So everybody was kind of happy about that.
Wow. We'll do a cover of Hash Pipe. Weezer's another band that's really gone in an odd direction.
Yeah, Rivers Cuomo is an odd guy.
I mean, not that I don't like Weezer, but they're another group with a rabid fan base.
I saw them in 2010. There's a band I never expected to see. Like, I was so happy to see them. Speaking of covering Hash Pipe, I saw David Usher cover Hash Pipe. So weird. Like, there's certain songs you never expect to hear.
Yeah.
And then you either hear them in the cover or then you actually really hear them. Like, when I look, even though like there's people out there that have obviously seen way more shows than me and we're in a position to, it's much harder. The Atlantic Canada is still a hard sell for bands because one, we're not big. Like if you're like a big American band or a big British band, if you come to Canada at all, you go to like Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, period.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to throw Canada a bone and say, let's do a Canadian tour, like, which is something these bands never do, but the one time they do them, they do not come to the Atlantic provinces because one, it's, you know, it's putting a lot more miles on it. Oh, we don't go over there. Two, we have a smaller population and stuff, so they just never come. But anyway, I was going to say, despite that, I've still managed to see a wide variety of bands over the years, including quite a few that I would never have expected to. Like, for instance, I saw in 2002, I did as part of a festival, and I only happened to come in for the last song of their set, which was the only song anybody knows by them, the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. Remember the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, that weird ska-ish band? Mm-hmm. They had one hit called The Impression That I Get. I went to Edgefest 2 with my then girlfriend, and we were late. We'd already missed like an hour. And we got in just as the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones were saying goodnight to everybody. And they're like, we're going to finish up. And the next thing I know, the trumpets are going, bum, ba, 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 ba. And I have to remember, it almost feels like it happened to a different person. But I'm like, yes, that's right. I saw them. And I saw them play their hits. Like, because they're not a band I ever would have thought that I would see or I would seek out. So I have a few of those where it just seems odd to think, yeah, I saw them. They were there for some reason. They were at Edgefest too. Because, yeah, that was the other thing. So Canada's big things were Somersault and Edgefest. Edgefest became so big that they made an Edgefest 2, which is kind of like what you expect, like with ESPN2. Like, Not as big as Edgefest, but kind of good, you know. So we get Edgefest 2 out here in Halifax. The big regret of my life is I wanted to see Edgefest 99 so bad because it would have been my favorite band ever, Moist, at the height of their power, right before. But it also had Silverchair. It had some really interesting bands. It had Hole. Can you imagine seeing Hole?
You said 99?
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, again, it would have been Silverchair at the height of their powers too, as far as I'm concerned. You know.
Sure.
Coming off Neon Ballroom and still playing all the other stuff because they hadn't gotten old and jaded yet. So there were a few. I think Matthew Good band was there. I've seen Matthew Good a few times, but I never saw Matthew Good band. And even now, I don't even know if I want to see Matthew Good anymore. He's aged horribly. He's a musician where like that life has just wrecked him. Like he's gotten kind of like fat and bloated, and he doesn't move around much. You're like, Jesus. I was thinking about it again today because today I watched the video for Anti-Pop to see the gnome thing. I'm like, look how young he looks.
Yeah.
Like that's 2001. He's like, he looks so young and vigorous. Like the last thing I heard about Matthew Good was like him collapsing on stage at some show because he's not in good health.
Wow. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, still, I'll have to make that 90s Canadian alternative playlist for you.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Trying to think. There were a few you listed to me that I actually was a fan of. But anyway. Oh, shoot, I can't think of them right now. But, like, you know, Pearl Jam drastically changed their sound. They technically are like a folk band now and have been for quite a while.
Yeah.
Like after probably like their third or fourth album, they really switched over to that folk style. It's really not rock anymore.
They're another band where as soon as they changed, I kind of lost direction.
Yeah.
I lost. So what was it? It was like 10.
And
Yield was in there. Something before Yield?
Yeah, I think, was it 10 first and then Yield?
Oh, yeah, 10 was before Yield. I'm saying was there something in between them?
Oh, no, I think that's it.
Okay. I remember because 10 was like a huge, huge thing, you know. Huge. And I remember a lot of people were disappointed in Yield, but I really liked Yield.
Was 10 89 or 90?
10 was 90 or 91, I think. Because Temple of the Dog like broke up in 1990 or whatever the hell that was.
Really?
Wow.
Remember
that?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. I gotta look up Pearl Jam's discography because I'm a little confused myself.
Oh, it was 91. Okay, I don't know why I was thinking 90.
Yeah.
So that's basically like as far as the national.
Yes,
goes.
There was. Yeah, see, Yield wasn't for quite a while. They did 10 Versus.
Versus, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Getting my titles mixed up.
And Vitology, which I don't even, what was on Vitology?
Vitology's a really good album, but it is a lot of that folky stuff.
Oh yeah, that's one. Well, yeah, that's one with the big hit "Better Man." I mean, I love that. Here's something that drove me nuts, and now it doesn't matter. And I guess I could use an iTunes card to solve it. Remember around like the turn of the century when they released 100 live albums? Remember that? No? Oh, no, they did. They just released they did this massive tour in Canada and the U.S. Dozens of shows.
Pearl Jam. Yeah.
Pearl Jam. And they released all of them on CD. They'd be like Pearl Jam Montreal, Pearl Jam Chicago, Pearl Jam Philadelphia. I went insane because all I was trying to do was find the perfect one because the set list differed a little bit sometimes. And I never actually wound up buying one. I was like, this one has Yellow Ledbetter, but it doesn't have Alive. I was losing my mind. I don't know how many there were, but there were at least 25 of them. And they used to have them all in the stores, and I would flip through them. I'd be like, this has this one, this one, this one. And I never actually committed. I couldn't figure it out. But now, I could just pick and choose, I guess, with iTunes. That might be something for me to do. But yeah, I lost my mind trying to do that. So Yield didn't come out until 98. By then, a lot of people were interested. But I really liked Yield. That's kind of my big one in a way. I love Given to Fly. And I guess what really stood out for me was, of course, Yield had the video for Do the Evolution, which I think is amazing. Remember that video? It's all animated?
I probably would if I saw it. I don't remember it right off.
That's probably the first thing you should do when we're done with the show is watch Do the Evolution.
Okay.
Because that's one of the few songs where like the video really influenced how I felt about the song. Even though the song's really good, it's like a super high energy, intense song. But the video is so great. The video is like it's like heavy metal, but like decent.
Yeah.
By heavy metal, you know what I mean. The
Yeah,
animated heavy metal. Anyway, it's really good. But Given to Fly is really good.
Yep. It went 10 verses, then Vitality, then Yield, right?
Yeah.
So there was like a 10, and then 3 years later, verses.
And in the 2000s, their albums got really spaced out. And I have no idea what was on them.
You know, Eddie Vedder's doing a lot of that farm aid stuff and a lot of like political type, activist stuff.
Like the newest thing I have by him is part of that. It was one of those CDs. I had it. It was like for some crisis or something, and he did that old '60s song "Last Kiss," which I love. I love that song.
Yeah, that's a good cover.
And it's a good cover. Yeah, very mournful.
He did "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay" is really good. His cover of that.
Oh, nice. I haven't even heard that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's probably some like Napster days stuff.
Yeah.
That's how I first heard some of that.
But I was more Soundgarden than Pearl Jam.
Yeah, I mean, I like Soundgarden.
I can't believe Chris Cornell's dead. It blows my mind.
Can't believe he killed himself. I can believe that he's dead.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot to live for.
Him and the guy from that other band that died like really soon around each other. I can think of the songs they sang. I can't think of the name of the band.
Alice in Chains?
No, Linkin Park.
Oh yeah, that he killed himself.
Dexter or something like that.
Chester.
Yeah.
He had like 5 kids or something.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up.
It's pretty messed up. I think you were right though. Like there are all these people like when he died, like coming out like oh Linkin Park. It's like when was the last time you listened to Linkin Park? Like it was just
Did I say that? Yeah, that sounds like
just like a bunch of posers like jumping on the trains. Like yeah, I'm sure you love Linkin Park.
It's the same way with actors, Oh no, we lost so and so. Like name 3 movies that they were in.
Coming around back to that, actually, another thing that's recent is that guy, that Italian filmmaker, just died, and people are shitting all over him because of the last Tango in Paris thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I get that was bad, but it doesn't necessarily ruin everything.
Was there controversy there?
Oh yeah, like okay, so that always had a really fairly, especially for early '70s, graphic sex scene.
Right.
Well, they always said that like it was like this close to more or less being real rape because him and Brando didn't really tell her about it, and then they just sort of made her do it, even though she didn't want to do it or something.
But it was simulated, right?
Yeah, I don't think there was actual penetration. I don't know, but
usually there's not.
Yeah,
Werner Herzog's involved.
I don't know, but anyway, but the actress has said like she was basically raped, and I'm not going to contradict her. I'm sure she's right, but still, that's a bad thing, and should never have happened, and that's a bad director that does that. But I don't know. I still don't think we should just all spit on his grave either.
Well, like no one like shat all over Brando, and he's the one that did it, right?
Yeah, I mean Brando was good and dead before everybody started talking about it. This only seemed to come out in the last few years. But yeah, Bernardo Bertolucci. The reason I like him isn't that movie. I like him because he did The Last Emperor, which is one of my favorite movies that maybe we'll even do sometime on here just so I can gush about it. The movie about the Chinese emperor.
I don't think I've seen it.
But you've heard of it, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm a huge fan of that movie, and so that's my favorite thing he did. He also did The Conformist, which I saw a million years ago, which is a really good movie, but I can't remember it. But it's always considered a really good movie, but that's an old one. That's like from the 50s.
Trying to look at what else he's done.
I should watch Last Tango in Paris again because I haven't seen it in so long. But I mean, there's people on like there that are even like, I don't know, flipping out like you're basically seeing a real rape or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I did a Google search for Last Tango in Paris, and what's coming up is guy on NPR was fired over a joke. Last Tango in Paris joke. David Edelstein?
Sounds familiar. But even, I mean, in its time, the movie was like incredibly controversial and banned in places.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, I knew that. It's on most lists of, controversial movies or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I don't think it's a particularly great movie, in my opinion, but.
Yeah, the film scandal centered mostly on an anal rape scene, featuring Paul's use of butter as lubricant. The theme was not in the original script, but was Brando's idea.
Oh, wow. Yeah. This is, that actually is what his joke was about. He wrote on Facebook, "Even grief is better with butter." Wow, that is kind of distasteful.
It is a pretty distasteful joke, yeah.
That's not smart. I mean, in the environment we live in, that's not a smart thing to do.
I don't like making jokes about people being dead, period,
No.
Like, even if they're terrible people, like, honestly, I mean, unless they're, like, I don't know, Hitler or something, I mean, yeah, still. I mean, like, for instance, I don't know, since it's topical, like, when Donald Trump dies, and he will die, don't worry, he's gonna die, like, the world will certainly be a better place. The world will certainly be a better place without him. Like, he's a bad guy who did a lot of bad things, and it's getting worse and worse, and the world will certainly be better when he dies. But I do think that when he dies and everybody, a certain amount of people celebrate, I think that's a little distasteful. Again, I'm certainly going to be satisfied that he's dead and gone, but I don't think it's right to like be like, oh, good, thank God, like they burn in hell. I don't like piling on dead people. I just think that's too much. Like I said, there's plenty of people that when they died, I thought, well, that's good. The world's certainly a better place now that they're gone. But I don't feel the need to trumpet it or exalt in it or whatever. I just think that's, I don't know, morbid and not something to do. Like when Osama bin Laden got killed, like certainly it was good that he was gone, but I didn't appreciate, I thought it was kind of crass, all this celebration and stuff going on. I didn't, again, I'm not in any way an apologist for him. Good. I'm glad, good that he's gone. Certainly was a man that caused a lot of pain and harm. Well, his life, the things he did caught up with him. Good, but no, I don't agree with like a celebration of somebody's death. I think you'd be like, you acknowledge it, be like, good, he's gone, move on. Like I don't believe in exalting in it. But anyway. So yeah, I don't think people should make jokes about anybody's death, really.
Sure.
Unless it's really like, I don't know, the type of joke that maybe the person would have liked. Like, I don't know, like if maybe it was a comedian, you can make a joke that maybe the comedian would have liked or something,
if I was like a host of a show on NPR, like that's not something that you need a social media outlet for,
No.
It's not like you're a comedian or something that needs a social media presence in order to be, relevant. Like
Right.
I would not have social media, to the public, I wouldn't do it because it's too much. People can take what you say out of context and
exactly. But no, so many people like it's 2018 and we've seen people go down in flames over and over again. And nobody seems to learn from it. Nobody learns anything. Everyone's like, think before you tweet. Like, what? No way. I don't do that.
People have like millions of followers, and the second it goes up, someone's going to screenshot it so you can delete it or whatever you want to do with it.
It's there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not smart. It's
Speaking of which, okay, so the last time I posted something for this show, I inadvertently in the tweet copy and pasted a porn link. I'm not kidding. I did. I deleted it immediately.
That's awesome.
But the last thing I posted up here, I was supposed to copy and paste our show, and it was a reference to one of our shows. And I copy and pasted a porn link from a different window.
Wow.
I was like, shit, that window's still open? What am I doing? But yeah, that was up for like 30 seconds before I deleted it. Now, luckily, we don't have a zillion followers. But if we did, That would have
That's
been
funny.
there, like me
That's funny.
linking to like some like Japanese porn scene.
It would have. I know one of the football analysis guys did that like last year. He didn't lose his job for some reason, but yeah.
See, the good news is you can't fire me.
Yeah.
We're equal in this. We can't fire each other.
I think what's more what needs to be discussed more is why do some of these sites have share buttons on them?
Mm-hmm.
Who's sharing this stuff with their friends and family? Hey, mom, check out this video.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, come on. I'm going to share this on my LinkedIn profile.
I need people to know what I'm all about. I'm gonna put that in my Twitter thing. Porn enthusiast. Not any specific porn, just porn in general. You know.
I'm an enthusiast. I like to dabble.
Every once in a while, you know, I'll just put it on the end of a tweet. You can check it out or not. It's your choice. I just like giving people the option.
Yeah,
But,
that is bizarre.
But I guess we can finish up on Amélie, which I think is still, all these years later, I still like it as much as I ever did. It is a delightful movie. It still looks really great. It's got great colors. It pops. Good filters on the camera, I suppose, or however they did. As we already said, they do a pretty good job of sort of seamlessly blending in some of the effects. They don't look weird and out of place. They look pretty on point. Super well cast. They do a great job of surrounding her with like equally interesting and quirky characters. Like I like all the characters. There's not like any character that I think is like annoying or stupid or I wish wasn't there. Like, I mean, the bad guy, the grocer is a mean guy, but that's the point. Like, you know, and you get to see like him get what's coming to him when she screws around with him and gaslights him and stuff. So it's pretty funny. Like I said, there's not too many movies that have a humorous example of gaslighting, but this one has it. Yeah, really cool, memorable music that has really endured over the years. It still pops up in various media and stuff with some of that delightful accordion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just makes me long for something that doesn't exist, sort of like this weird France, Paris of a begotten time, but also a present time. You know, just sort of all the nice elements put together with all the ugly parts of Paris shut out. Great role for the actress to play. The haircut and everything. What do you call that? Page boy or something similar. You know, really fits the character. And as we said, wide, expressive eyes. And yeah, I guess on the surface, you could call the movie a romantic comedy, but that's not how I think of it. I don't think of it as a romantic comedy. If it is a romantic comedy, at least it proves that romantic comedies don't have to be generic and formulaic, because like 99% of romantic comedies are like, oh, there's this guy or there's this girl, and they're living their life, and they're so haggard, and they're so worried, but in some weird happenstance, they meet this person, and either they fall in love with them and they try to get them, or, guess what, here's the huge twist, they don't like each other. Oh man, they cannot stand each other. But wait,
Rob Schneider is
yeah, Rob Schneider and some much younger actress that should not be anywhere near him.
Well, I mean, I guess if you have to put it into a category, yeah.
Yeah. But I'd be like, it's a magic realism thing. I don't know.
I would really call it, comedy really over comedy romance, because romance is almost a side plot.
Yeah.
It's not even,
romance is sort of how it ends, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean,
but it's not necessarily about that. It's about, how she affects other people's lives and how she eventually realizes she has to sort of take control of her own life and live her own life. And in that way, it is through making a meaningful connection with another person, romantically, sure. Like, if it was done in another way, I could even complain. I'd be like, oh, they ruined it. Like, oh, to fix her life, she needs a man. But they did it in such a way that it doesn't come across that way, They weren't just saying, oh, she's doing all these silly things, but what she really needs is a boyfriend, It doesn't come across that way. It's done well. It seems like, yeah, he's like her. He's another sort of strange soul, and here they are, finding each other, and they can help fulfill each other, It's not just one of those things where, yes, he's a man, she's a woman, they have to get together, They do a good job of skirting all that bullshit.
Well, that's basically just like the final, 5-10 minutes of the film. Yeah. Like, we're not watching them court each other for the entire movie.
No,
So,
and when they are courting, it's a very different sort of
right.
courting, right? And the will, and they have an interesting will she won't she, and that like as they get closer to it, she's sort of shying and backing away from it, and it really takes and there is a really great sort of romantic moment towards the end too. So okay, he comes to her door, and she won't answer, and then she sort of retreats, and then she sees the tape that the old man has sent to her. Now he's turned the tables on her. She'd been sending him tapes. He sends her a tape of himself, telling her, to go for it, and she, this is a chance, and she should go for it, and she should meet this guy. And then so she runs back and think, oh, he's gone. She's going to chase him. Well, she opens the door, and he's still there. I think that's a really great moment. I like that he's still there. It's nice. He hasn't given up. She doesn't have to go through a chase. He's still there. I like that. I thought that was a really great moment.
Right. Yeah, I think this is easily one of the better films of the 2000s.
Yeah. Incidentally, 2001 is my favorite year in film. It just worked out that way, and this is one of the reasons why, because I hold it up so high.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite films of all time.
Yeah, if people are interested, I made a list of the 2001 films on my letterbox, so you can see why I like 2001 so much. Because there's about 10 or 11 films that I really love, and they all came out in that year, which is pretty cool.
Pre-September.
Yeah. But, yeah, it's nice to do something lighthearted and whimsical every once in a while and stuff like that. And so maybe we'll, not necessarily to the degree that Amélie is, also plus Amélie is sort of a unique movie. It's not like you can just say, oh, what's another movie like Amélie? Well, that's a little hard to do. But yeah, maybe we'll do a bit softer stuff throughout December. I don't know. That's not a hard rule and stuff. And we're not changing the direction of the show. The show is, what it is. We do whatever we feel like doing, which is why we do it and stuff. Although there was something that I thought was kind of interesting. I'll run by you later because I think I'll explain how it goes there. Because I was going to say how the show is kind of supposed to be an alternative to so many of like the movies. It's supposed to be an alternative to like the movies that get talked about anyway. All the movies that are coming out that are big and important. Obviously we acknowledge them, we know they're happening, but the whole point is, well, we're going to do something else. That is a vague sort of description of this show, I suppose.
And now for something completely different.
Exactly. We try to hit you guys with curveballs every once in a while, and also. If you guys have requests, we do try to eventually get around to them. We have a lot of stuff, but at least a few times I think we've managed to do that. So
we have some requests.
I know we're late, so hopefully some people are watching. I know we threw everybody off by missing 2 weeks and then coming in late, but hopefully you'll get around to seeing this at some point. You can let us know what you thought of this one and what you'd like to see in the future.
Yeah, sounds good. And I say watch all of Juno's films.
Yeah, I still haven't seen, what is it, Delicatessen?
That's maybe his first full-length feature, or he and the other co-director we mentioned earlier.
That's the one I haven't seen. It's hard to remember. But yeah, I'm really annoyed that I don't own Amélie anymore. I'd like to get it again. And I would certainly like to own I almost said Wizards. I almost said Wizards of the Lost Kingdom. Sorry, I just watched Wizards of the Lost Kingdom on the new Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Because what's funny about that is I'll do a little thing before we wrap up, is that I've actually seen Wizards of the Lost Kingdom. Like, without that. I saw it on TV one day back in 2003. It just happened to be on Space or something. And it was so terrible that I was enthralled, and I watched it. And what was really weird, so this is 2003. So I look up the movie on IMDb, and I see that the guy in it, the weird middle-aged hero, Core, is played by Bo Svensson. I find out that Bo Svensson's claim to fame was back in the 70s. He played the worst real-life name ever, Buford Pusser.
Right.
From Walking Tall.
Right.
Because and they actually made like at least 1 or 2 Walking Tall sequels. So I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Only a few weeks later. So this would have been like, I think around April 2003. My sister and my friend, because this is back when we were living in an apartment together, my first apartment, we all went to see Kill Bill Volume 2. And there was Bo Svensson. And like my mind almost like melted. He was the organist in the opening scene at the wedding chapel. I was like, what? Like, how the hell did he wind up here? And you just know that, like, it was probably because of The Walking Tall. You know that, like, Tarantino would have been, like, a big fan of Walking Tall. And he'd be like, oh, Bo Svensson, you're so badass. Can you want a small part in my movie? Bo Svensson's like, I don't have anything else going on. Okay.
Let me get a look at your feet. Man.
Oh, man.
Like, Buford Pusser has got to be the worst name I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. Like, and they didn't even change it for the original movies. They were like, yes, Buford Pusser. At least in the movie they did for The Rock, they were like, yeah, let's give him a normal name. He's like Chris.
Was his name not? Oh, it wasn't Buford? Okay.
Oh, no. It was like Chris or something. It was something super generic. Like, they were like, get away from Buford Pusser. Like, Jesus Christ.
It's like your mouth is like throwing up. It's the sound of retching.
The man might have been a true hero, but what a fucking name. But anyway, yeah, so...
You're right. They changed his name. Chris Vaughn.
Yeah.
That's a badass name.
Exactly.
That's a badass name.
I mean, even the rock star power might falter a little, or if he has to play somebody named Buford Pusser.
That may have been part of the contract.
Yeah. He'd be like, no way, you're changing the name. The real Buford Pusser's probably dead by this time anyway. He doesn't give a fuck.
I always thought the real Buford Pusser, the guy who played him, was a black guy, but okay. So, he was a white guy, right? Walking Tall was a white guy.
Yeah, in the movie and real life.
Okay. Okay.
Like, it's based on a true story. I mean, I'm sure they changed some things, but it is true that, like, a guy, he was like a soldier. He came back to his town to, like, live the good life, found out his town was full of crime and corruption, and the cops sucked. I think he did get assaulted. He ran for sheriff and won, and then started, like, cleaning up the town, and he had a 2x4. Like, that's all more or less true.
Really?
Like,
wow.
Yeah. Like, I don't know the details they show in the movies. I've never seen the original movie. And then they actually made at least one sequel to the original movie that is completely made up.
I think they made like 4 of those.
Yeah. And I think Bo Svensson's in all of them.
Yeah, I think so.
That's his claim to fame. But anyway, now I have to watch Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2, which I've never seen, which I'll get to see on the new Mystery Science 3000.
I have never heard of that film.
It's awful. It's like this horrible low budget swords and sorcery fantasy. It also has like the least climactic final battle ever. So it's like about this kid who's the son of like the head wizard, and then the bad wizard comes in and kills everybody, and the kid runs away, and the kid winds up like meeting this traveling soldier played by Bo Svensson, and eventually, of course, they get back together to fight the bad guy. So in the end, they're like in this like really all the sets look like paper mache, the costumes are garbage, everything's cheap and terrible looking. Bo Svensson's already like, got like a dad bod and out of breath all the time. And he's supposed to be their big hero with the sword. But anyway, so it comes down to climactic battle of the evil wizard and the kid. It's like, kids, you killed my father. So basically, now, even if you take out the horrible effects, like the magic effects look like crayon drawn on the screen, basically, right? But even if you take that out, here is their fight. Basically, there's a castle that's like a square courtyard. They teleport from place to place and basically lazily wave their arms at each other. The bad guy will go like, and then the kid will go, and everything. And they do this for like 5 minutes until he finally like hits him with a spell and kills him.
Wow!
It's like the worst final battle of any movie ever. So yeah, I'm really excited to watch the second one, and that's even without. That's also how I saw Mac and Me. I'd never seen Mac and Me before. I know that sounds impossible. I never saw it, so I saw it with the Mystery Science 3000. I'm like, holy wow!
You mean that feature-length McDonald's commercial?
Yeah. There's a good part in that too, like where like all the like hip kids are like outside like break dancing in front of the McDonald's. Mm-hmm. One of them's like, some movies are just timeless. Like you could take this movie from any year and it would still be cool. Something like that.
I think one of those dancers was Jean-Claude Van Damme too.
Oh my god, I'll have to look for that.
Yeah.
You knew he had the skills because you saw it in Kickboxer.
Of course.
It's sad that when my Thai girlfriend, I think anytime I think of your country, I think of that. I think of him in that club dancing with the two girls.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh man.
yeah. I think of Bolo Young just like smashing a cement pillar.
That too, but the dance is everything.
Yeah, the dance sells it. So you watched those with was it Riff Tracks? You said
No, the new version of Mystery Science 3000. That's the Netflix one.
okay.
They just brought up the second season just started. I haven't like I never had really an opportunity to watch those shows, so I can't say I was a fan. But I just saw them here and there over the years.
Yeah,
You know, I've picked and choose. But anyway, I was looking and I saw it just came up on my Netflix that the new season of the new one came on. And then I was looking at the first season, and I knew, yeah, it was kind of a big deal because, Patton Oswalt's on it now and stuff. He's just he plays one of the bad guys. He's not one of the guys. But anyway, and I was like, Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, holy fuck! So I watched it, and I also saw Mac and Me was on this one. I was like, I've never actually seen Mac and Me, period. So I might as well watch it. So yeah, so I'm gonna watch Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2 very soon.
Is that on there also?
Yeah,
Oh wow.
I think they make them do the back to back, which is pretty hilarious.
Is it pretty funny?
Yeah, at least the ones I've seen. Our friend Eric is the big fan of the show. Like he's seen all of them. I think he said like the Netflix one, the first season, he wasn't really that happy with, but he thinks this new one is better. I don't know, something like that. But I don't know. The new guy, Jonah, he seems all right. I don't know. Like I can't remember exactly when or where I first saw Mystery Science 3000. Like we didn't have the channels that had them. It wasn't until like Space became a channel and they started to show it on Space.
Mm-hmm. Oh, where the hell started out? Like, was it Comedy Central?
Where it actually started out wasn't a national channel at all. It started out on a local, like what is it, Minnesota channel or something.
Oh, wow.
Like some like local station. But then it was on the channel that would become Comedy Central. For 2 years, it was called something else, and then it merged with a different channel and became Comedy Central.
Was it
like
Ha?
I don't know.
There was one called Ha, and there was one called like the Comedy something.
This one was like called something comedy. I don't know. HBO had just made a comedy channel, and that's what it was. But then there was another existing comedy channel that was better. Then HBO basically bought it and combined them and turned it into Comedy Central. Something like that. But anyways, obviously they must have made the first season available, so obviously people could see it. But the first season, which was from November 88 into like the end of 89, was just basically a local Minnesota or something station.
Like a public access thing?
I don't know if it was that low down the rung, but
okay, so it was actually like television.
But in any case, you basically had to live in the area to see it. Like it wasn't national at all, but it got picked up because I was just reading up on the history of it the other day because I was like, I don't even know how this works. Because
yeah, the Comedy Channel is the. But
Riff Tracks came from this. Riff Tracks is made by I think some of the same people that worked. I've never seen a Riff Tracks. I've heard it's really good though, so I don't know.
Okay, so HBO launched the Comedy Channel, and then Viacom launched Ha.
Okay, Viacom.
And see, I don't know when they got combined.
Back in the early 2000s, that was something my friends and I used to do to entertain ourselves, was just watch movies and make fun of them.
Oh, yeah.
To the point that we had other friends that came over to watch us work. Like, they didn't participate. They just wanted us to go because we were good at it. And we didn't just we just did it for everything. Like, because we did it for lots of good movies too. One of my favorite things that I ever did was I was with my friend Shane and Bruce. We watched Aliens. We'd all seen Aliens 1,000 times, and we were just on fire for that. I can't remember most of it, and saying the jokes now out of context doesn't sound like anything. Right. But my favorite bit was this whole part where how Apone's always yelling at them and be like, "Oh, come on," and he's like that. Like my friend Bruce had this whole thing about how he wanted their guns to be spotlessly clean. And the whole idea was that they all had like a special bar of gun soap with them. And so, I don't know, it was really funny with the thing. He's like, "Get your gun soap out." Like, I don't want to see a speck on that barrel. I don't know. It was super funny. There was other stuff too, but I can't remember it now. But yeah, I had such great chemistry with those guys. I remember my girlfriend at the time, like, Shane and I would entertain her. We'd like put TV on and we'd like go to Seinfeld and we mute it, and then we just make up the stuff and we'd all Because it's kind of easy to fit
Yeah.
Seinfeld, you know. George would come in waving his hands and stuff like that. It was easy. So yeah, we used to do that to entertain her. We would just make up the dialogue.
Oh man, yeah.
I miss those guys. I had good chemistry with you guys too, though. But it's too bad we can't do live commentaries quite that way.
Well, I think we have a lot of like overlap in our. I think there may be a little bit of a delay in our.
It makes it a little tougher.
We cut each other off all the time.
Yeah, it makes it tougher. But I mean, we still have fun. It's still like doing. We'll have to do one soon because we haven't done it for about a month.
Yeah. Figure out what's going on with the work situation.
He's got a situation. Well, I haven't heard from him in a few days. Is something going on? I didn't.
Well, no, he can't like talk very loudly at night.
Oh, right, yeah. It's weird. He went from that's most of his is better, but that seems to have gotten worse. But anyway, I don't know. Figure it out. Anyway, we've gone on too long for this show, so we should wrap. But as you people know, there's plenty of stuff in the future with this show and random live commentaries and such. So hopefully you can join us and check that out. I don't know, feeling pretty good about it and enthusiastic. So we don't know what next week is. We should, because we took 2 weeks off and we should have had time, but oh well. We'll figure it out in the next few days and let you know. This time we didn't even announce anything, but we'll probably over the weekend we'll probably actually try to announce what the show is and give some people a heads up, so we can get our feet back under ourselves as we move towards Christmas. The second half of December, I'll be at my parents' house, but I'll still be able to do the show as I did last year. And yeah, their internet is better now. I remember I used to worry about it, but now their internet's better, so it's not too bad. So yeah, over the Christmas break or whatever you want to call it, we'll continue to do stuff. Cool. So that'll be fun. So yeah, so that was Amélie, Jean-Pierre Jeunet. And that'll be all for now. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time in the future. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.